Good morning. Today is Tuesday, May 6th. The Budget Committee is getting started at 9:40. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Sanier. Alderman Browning.
Present.
Alderwoman Velasquez. Alderman Devoti.
Present.
Chair Aldrich.
Present.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Sanier. Alderwoman Velasquez. We have 3 present.
Thank you so much. Today, we are not taking a vote on anything. We're just reviewing, well, before we do that, there is no approval of the minutes. Item number 4 is board bills for review. Today, we'll continue our saga of digging deep into the budget and reviewing board bill number 1. Today, we will hear from several departments. We will shortly hear from the mayor's office. We also will hear from the public safety department, City Emergency Management Agency, as some of us know as SEMA, and then we will hear from the Comptroller Office. With that being said, we're going to dive straight on in and hear from the mayor's office on her budget. Good morning, Madam Mayor.
Good morning, Chair Aldrich. How are you today?
I'm good. I had said before we got started that, I remember about a year ago you were sitting here and leading the Budget Committee, and I know many of us appreciated your deep dive into it, so we're going to try to keep that track record going, and with that, want to turn it over to you so you proceed with the budget.
I appreciate that, and I know that the Budget Committee's in good hands with you as Chair. I know the good work we did last year. And I appreciate that you're starting off with the mayor's budget as the first item before, and I want to also take a moment to recognize I have many members of my staff here today, and so I thought I would just really quickly introduce folks. I think you probably know everyone, but starting in the front row, the liaison to you all, the Board of Aldermen, Dan Gunther. We have Emily Tinhouse, the Deputy Chief of Staff, Julian Nix, the Deputy Director of Operations, Bob Hurlith, the Interim Director of Operations, Casey Milberg, who you all know, Policy Director, and Nancy Hawes, our Chief of Staff. And so if you have any questions, for one, I want to make sure that you all feel like our office is open and that the folks in my office are partners to you all in the work that we're doing down here together to move the city forward. To start with our budget here today, I want to first start out and also thank Budget Director Paul Payne, because the overwhelming majority of work that was done on this budget was done prior to me being sworn in as your mayor. So I want to be respectful of the work that was done prior to me coming in, recognizing the very short turnaround. While we are going to be making some movements within the mayor's office to accommodate staff and changing and some shifting around, what we did here before you is keep the budget exactly the same as presented to us. We did that for a couple reasons. One, we didn't have time to really dig into it, and number two, we wanted to be respectful of the time. And so as you can see here, the budget largely reflects the budget from last year. We do not anticipate asking the Board of Aldermen for any additional funds for the mayor's office. The changes that I mentioned that we might be making would be just moving some staffing positions around to accommodate the folks that we're looking to hire and fill the roles in the mayor's office. But we did keep the budget largely the same. As you can see here, the overwhelming majority of funds going into the mayor's office is in the form of personnel, the staffing positions. We do have a little bit of funding for things like computers and office supplies, those sorts of things, totaling of $33,000. A couple of other things, printers, that printer lease resulting in about $12,000. But largely speaking, the majority of the mayor's office budget is roughly the same as last year's budget and is largely in personnel. But I would be happy to take questions. I will say too, the mayor's office often just kind of gives a moment of reflection on the budget as a whole. While I'm really grateful for the time I've spent with the budget director and kind of going through the Board of E&A, largely speaking, the mayor's office, we went ahead and moved forward the budget as presented by the budget director this year, again, recognizing short turnaround. We are also very excited to hear what the Board of Aldermen has to say about the budget. We are also still digging in you all are. So while we anticipate there may be some changes here through the E&A process at the end, we also want to hear from you all, and we want to move through this budget process together.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will start in order of seniority for questions for the mayor, starting with Alderwoman Sanye.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First, I just wanted to commend you for coming yourself. I think that's such a nice treat for the mayor to take the time and come themselves to present their budget. And I think that's really helpful because I think, especially because it's new, I think it's good for residents to hear a little bit about the transition period. And I know you talked, I saw a little conversation about like the timeline and ideas of changing it. So I did want to say like that's something I'm totally in support of. I know that's a longer term conversation and involves some other timelines, but you know, I definitely would love to create a scenario where after elections, if there are new folks who come into office, they get a chance to have, you know, just have a little bit more time to dig through their budgets, to comprise their budgets, to think, you know, specifically about roles you might want in your administration. Obviously, you didn't have, you know, time for that, but I would love to just make sure you know that I'm open to that conversation. And, you know, I appreciate everyone acting quickly to make the transition, but I think the timeline is like, we've talked about it a lot, even on the Board of Aldermen, that it's not the best, because I remember being an alder and getting sworn in, and right away, you're like jumping into budget. So I wanted to uplift that and say like, I'm open to that conversation and a supporter of that. Thank you for coming yourself. And I guess really, I don't have like too many questions specifically about your budget, just if you wanted to talk a little bit about what it has been like with the transition and having to move so quickly with the budget.
Yeah, thank you, Alderman or Alderwoman Sonia. I think you bring up a really important issue that we should be discussing moving forward. I think that would be part of the larger charter reform, voting process reform. You know, we are also dealing with the vacancy of the 8th Ward and how we fill that. The election cycle, as you know, is going to be very different than the runoff election cycles that all of us ran on in normal election cycles. And so I think there's a whole host of things, but with regards specifically to timing, it has been very difficult. You know, after the election, there were 6 days to be sworn in. I know Alderman Devotie is the similar position, having to jump right into the budget. I do think we should be revisiting that so we can have a more thoughtful approach to long-range planning and budgeting in general. We are looking at some very tough years ahead, I would say, a combination of things, the national trends, you know, the uncertainty in markets and that sort of thing as the result of happening at the federal level. The all ARPA funds drying up here in the city will have a big budget. And then, of course, the federal grants that do a large amount of the heavy lifting on some of the social services that the city really needs to best serve some of our most vulnerable citizens. And so as we move through this, as I mentioned, our choice was to move forward with the budget as presented while continuing to dig into the issues that we need to address. We also thought this was a really good opportunity to also hear from citizens. I was really grateful to hear the sideboard that the chairman was having with the director about making sure that we're arranging those public hearings, hearing from you all, and making sure that we're taking into account the priorities of the legislative branch as well as the community as a whole as we move through what is going to be the start of a couple of, I think, very tough budget years ahead of us. I would very much welcome the conversation on how we can change the timeline.
Excellent, thank you. And I guess in your process, is there something, I know you've only been here for a few weeks, but is there one thing that is like really sticking out to you in the process that you're like, this needs to change? Is there a certain technology or a certain position? Or I'm just curious about in your budget conversations, I know you haven't changed it. Is there anything that has like piqued your interest specifically that you think you might be interested in changing or doing differently?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest priorities that we have is to incorporate the pay study that we're looking to complete here in the next coming weeks, understanding where pay should be for our workforce to be able to attract and retain and really respect and compensate people for the good work that we expect them to do on a regular basis. So prioritizing that is going to be how we move forward. I'll also say too that just recognizing we're not going to have the opportunity to really incorporate that before the budget process is done. So, between that, the technology pieces that you mentioned, we're looking to, upgrade, how you do the building division permits, making sure we can get those types of things online, outsourcing things. Those are going to be deeper dives, deeper conversations, and deeper understandings of how that will impact staffing, how that will impact the line items for things like technology across departments. And we're recognizing that even through this budget process, some of that work is going to be ongoing. And so we're going to be, what my goal would be to continue the budget discussion, those conversations beyond the time at which we approve the final budget for the year so that we can get started, we can move ahead with the fiscal year, but continuing to recognize the changes and the ongoing investments and shifts in how we do things that I think we need to do to make sure that we're moving past the 21st century, but certainly moving into a better functioning set of systems.
Well, I love those observations. I look forward to working with you however possible on moving it forward. I've also been really curious about the pay study as well as HR or not HR for staff. I think that's something else a lot of employees I know, as alders will come to us and uplift issues and sometimes feel like they kind of have to go through their supervisor in a lot of situations in order to get some of their HR, personnel things addressed. So I think that all of those are really good conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you, and Madam Mayor, it's good to see you here. I similarly don't have too many questions as this, as you noted, doesn't change from last year, but understand again that the short timeline has put you in a crunch here, and really looking forward to seeing the budget next year that is put together fully under your administration. I think I really appreciate your comments just now about how you'd like to approach this, including discussions after we pass this budget and get the year started. I always find the best time to approach something is right after we just did it to kind of figure out what we could change. I also just want to put on record that I really am a fan of the way you're approaching staffing your administration, that you're putting interim people in place while you conduct wider searches, knowing that you can't possibly put somebody in charge in 6 days that is going to be exactly what this is. So really just appreciate the way you're handling the job so far. I'm really looking forward to the budget next year, as well as just seeing how we can address some of these issues that even you observed when you were an alderwoman, that keep our city from performing those basic city services that we need to be delivering to our residents. So thank you so much. Again, no questions, but just really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Alderman Browning. And, please do feel free to reach out to those directors, folks. Thank them for stepping up out of retirement, getting off the fishing boat, and coming back to work for the city for a period. They really do earnestly care about the city and the well-being, and that's why they've stepped up to do that work. And so please consider them your partners in moving forward.
Alderman Velasquez.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies, I had some car trouble, Madam Mayor. I don't have any questions for you, but I'm sure, as I echo the rest of my colleagues, thank you for being here. I'm sure I will have questions, and I will reach out to you or your office or your liaison. And, we'll obviously, hopefully have some continued partnership and working on making the city even better.
Thank you, Alderwoman Velasquez.
Thank you.
Alderman Devotie.
Mayor, good morning. It's good to see you again. I think we both share a common concern with respect to the provision of basic services. From my perspective, it seems like part of our problem as a city is adequate staffing. So I am very interested to see the results of the upcoming wage study and working with you to see what we can do to adequately fill out our departments and get folks to work. You mentioned the short time that you've had to take a look at the budget. From your perspective, within that short time, do you have any comments with respect to the budget as presented, either from a general standpoint or a specific standpoint?
Well, thank you for that. I do agree that my concern right off the bat is making sure that we have the basic city services functioning to the best of our ability. My concerns with the budget really is a tightening. I think my largest concern overall, and the budget director really pointed a little bit during the presentation to the Board of VNA, the amount of revenue increase is smaller as a percentage than the cost of doing business over the last few years. The population loss, the loss of taxpayers, the reduction in assessed real estate downtown is really impacting our overall fiscal health. I have concerns, across the board on that front. So I think that, as we tighten the belt, we want to make sure that as we're giving raises, we do it in the most effective way possible. It sounds easy to do across the board, but really when you get into it, there are very large disparities in different pockets. When you give raises, it's important to do so in a way that doesn't have ripple effects and have a negative impact on workers at other ends of pay scales and that sort of thing. We want to make sure we're targeting those areas that have high vacancy. I want to give a plug to Ryan Coleman, who's your fiscal analyst here, who does a phenomenal job. He really helped me last year as budget chair to go through the vacancy reports that the personnel department was offering. He's a wealth of information and really has the ability to dig well into the budget. So as you all are going through this, I consider him somebody that can liaison very well with the mayor's office on specific issues. But I think where my biggest concerns are in general are the staffing of the departments that perform basic city services, making sure that the process through which people are getting hired or have the ability to get hired is streamlined and goes faster so that folks can get in the door. We're really focused right now on hiring folks for positions like mowing grass and those sorts of things that really pick up in the summer. Making sure that we have the staffing to do that is a priority so we can open the pools on time. We have lifeguards and those things in place. But overall, my biggest concern is the fiscal health of the city and making sure that we are positioning ourselves for increasing the tax base so that we can provide those base level city services. We have a large amount of vacancies, Alderman Devotee, but we also account for a large amount of vacancies in the way that we do negative accounting in the budget. So it's not a zero-sum game. A lot of those vacancies are already accounted for. So when we're talking about giving raises, we have to be very judicious and that in a way that results in a more efficient and better staffed workforce in the spaces where we are prioritizing people to be. So it's not a super simple a task at hand. It's a rather complicated one that we are taking very seriously.
So from the perspective of the mayor's office, as we're working over the next month, is there a particular subject from a personnel perspective where we should be targeting that perhaps the budget as presented has a shortcoming from your office's perspective?
Well, what I will say, we've also been meeting with the department heads in the work that this committee does. Going through the budget line item by line item is really important. We've been doing that as well. I can't point to one specific thing, but rather I would say making sure that the processes we have in place, the technology that our departments need, I'm very concerned about making sure that the building division has the technology it needs to implement the Airbnb once that lawsuit moves forward, that we have the technology we need to be able to review building permits and those sorts of things, streamlining those things, those many things that are not in the budget per se, but we need to be encouraging and directing our department heads and our employees to be thinking outside the box that we're operating in and figuring out ways to do more with less. I think that's a really important part of the puzzle. And so I think, again, when we're looking at the income streams, I think it's really important to take a hold of what the rebate of the earnings tax is going to result in, how that's going to negatively impact our revenue forward and diversifying our revenue streams. I also want to also say the Department of Transportation that voters overwhelmingly voted for, the funding that is a key priority for us. We have got to figure out a funding stream to be able to make sure that we can deliver on what our residents overwhelmingly decided that they want us to do for them. And we don't have a stream of funding for that right now. So making sure that we're prioritizing how to do those things that our residents are expecting us is really, really, really important to me and really important to our administration.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will also echo, yes, Mr. Coleman is phenomenal when it comes to this process. As you know, the last 2 years, how he was, he digs deep into it, and he's been very helpful this year with setting up the schedule, and we definitely will plan to keep him here. So I know those was comments. I know how the game goes also, so Mr. Coleman is not for sale for any other office. He's staying at the board. But I just want to also say thank you, Mayor. Your office has been really helpful in this process in partnering with my office to make sure that department heads, come in front of the committee so that we can, do our job as a legislative process. And Julian has been a really big help in that process as well. So I just want to thank him, as well as Mr. Gunther. Just not in, just like 2 quick questions. For the record, like you said, this isn't a budget that, you're inheriting, so it's not something that you decided, but it looks like from, like you say, there's not much increase, but mainly from personnel, that there's like a roughly 600 or 66,757 increase from the last year's budget, which I'm assuming is probably a new person that maybe added from the previous year to this year's budget.
We didn't add any persons, I don't believe. The number of persons stays from 19.5 to 19.5. I think that's just the slight increases in salaries across
Okay.
the board.
So that's a 3%.
We're not planning on increasing the staffing in the mayor's office at this time.
Gotcha. And right now, it looks like the total amount of staff in the mayor's office, if I'm correct, is 2020. And I know you're doing a lot of, like you say, moving around, making sure you can get your department filled. Do you think those 20 positions will be enough for the people that you're trying to bring to make sure that the city's successful?
We would love to increase that, Chairman Aldrich. We also recognize that it's a very tight budget cycle across the board. So we're being very judicious in that. I also want to thank all of you all for being so kind as through staffing changes and that sort of thing. You probably know that a large number of the administrative staff retired the moment that we took office. So the institutional knowledge, 50 years from Kathy Sminkowski, Denise Roberts, we had really long-standing institutional knowledge in the mayor's office that retired all at the same time. So we're really grateful for you all for being very, very kind to us and patient as we get our feet grounded here. We would love to have more staff, frankly. I think, we're really struggling with the positions of Office of Violence Prevention, the liaison to education, all the other pieces that you need to really have, the development pieces in the mayor's office, and segmenting them and asking, figuring out, can we have one person serve in 4 roles? And that's a lot to ask of folks. So if you find extra budget, we would love to have it to be able to that staff, but being respectful of where we are as a community as far as the budget is concerned. We're trying to be mindful of that.
Totally understand. And just a quick question, Ms. Kathy at the front desk is just a wonderful person. Appreciate all her years of service. And like you said, there's been a lot of retirement. Out of the 20 positions that your office currently is budgeted for, with you being new and some changes, totally understand, but just curious, how many of those out of 20 right now would you say are occupied currently?
If I have to guess, I would say 14.
Okay.
14 of them are currently occupied.
Okay. So not far from the 20 at all.
Not far, yes, not far.
That is all my questions. I will just ask one quick round if anybody else in the committee has any questions. Look like no one else. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and your team for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
No problem. Next up, we have Department of Public Safety that is supposed to be here at 10:15, so we got a little bit of a break, so I'm not seeing them in here. So what I will do is, Madam Clerk, I'm just gonna have us go into a little short 10-minute recess. I'd like to take a motion that we go into a 15-minute recess.
Second.
It was moved by Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we go into a 15-minute recess. The Budget Committee will resume from our short recess, and as we go back into committee from our recess, I would like to have our Public Safety Director come up next to present his budget. Please introduce yourself. I know you're new to the city, so if you want to just give a brief little update of who you are and maybe introduce your team, and then you can dive straight into the budget, which I know you have a presentation.
Okay.
And to all committee members, if you want to follow the presentation outside of TV screen, you can also in the drive, so you can follow it through the drive as well. You may proceed, Mr. Director.
Good morning. My name is Sean Dace, and I am your new Public Safety Director for the City of St. Louis. I'm in week 3, and I'm really excited for this awesome opportunity and look forward to working with all of you all. But first, before I say anything, I want to thank Director Call, the former Director Call, who was gracious enough to call me when he heard I was appointed to this position, offering me advice and insight, which I truly appreciated. I also want to thank Mayor Kara Spencer for appointing me to this important position and having faith that I can do the job. A little bit about me and my background. You said I was new to the city. I'm really not. I was born and raised on the east side, but I spent 35 years as a St. Louis City policeman, retiring at the rank of major. I served in several different positions throughout the police department, mobile reserve, SWAT, detective bureaus, homicide, family violence, sex crimes, child abuse. I was one of the first 4 officers to start the public housing unit. I had a lot of experience. As a young officer, I was highly decorated relative to crime prevention, but it is my work with community outreach that I'm most proud of. I started the Police Athletic League with several other officers. And the Police Athletic League is a nonprofit organization that caters toward policemen working with children in various sports and arts and crafts. I was actually appointed as a coordinator in 2003, and I raised the amount of children that we served to 1,500. That was the first time that got that high, and it hasn't been that high since. I'm also started a men's basketball league through the police department, funded by Parks and Recreation, where we mentored young men 18 and up through basketball programs. Each team, we had a 10-team league. Each team was coached by 2 St. Louis City policemen. So this program was able to garner us a lot of police applicants for the police department, which some of the people that participated are still policemen now. I also ran an intramural program to help with retention. And these programs are some similar activities I hope to bring to public safety to assist with recruiting and retention of our employees, realizing that we're in competition with all the other employees throughout the region. I'm also hopeful that all 8 divisions within public safety can work together on projects and issues beneficial to their individual divisions and the city of St. Louis. For example, I see our violence prevention group working closely with neighborhood stabilization and with corrections. I'm also encouraging my commissioners to work regionally with our colleagues throughout the metro area, exchanging ideas that may make the divisions they work in more efficiently. With me today is Deputy Director Levon Smart. You raise your hand, Levon. Carletta Fielder, which I will defer all budget-related questions to. She's our fiscal officer, and public information officer, Jamela Brown. Okay, so in the budget, our office requested a little under 1.3 million, with close to 1.2 million being allocated under the general fund. Part of the public safety's budget is inclusive of a percentage of sales tax and $1 million under Proposition P and S, which currently serves funding sources towards crime prevention programming. A little over 200,000 is allocated under the Justice Assistant Grant, JAG, allowing continued funding of 2 criminal analyst positions within the homicide division of SLMPD. We are also in the process of hiring several vacant positions: Neighborhood Stabilization Commissioner, Violence Prevention Commissioner, and Public Safety Officer. We're asking for a reassessment of 2 fund cost centers. The first reassessment involves Fund Cost Center 541500. You put that up. Of the general funds allocation of health and safety equipment. Public safety requested $25,000 toward the purchase of 7 Stryker AEDs. AED stands for Automated External Defibrillator. Here's the background that led to this request. 8 months ago, the Public Safety Department formed a critical incident working group to aim towards emergency management in city buildings. This particular critical incident working group is composed of public safety officials from various departments, including police, fire, EMS, marshals, and SEMA. The main focus is addressing emergency management protocols within official city buildings, beginning first with City Hall as a pilot. The top training priorities for City Hall officials and employees include emergency alarm response and evacuation training, active shooter incident training, stop the bleed training, and first aid and CPR training. First aid and CPR training is prioritized as the first training to be conducted under the working group. This initiative was given higher priority following 2 heart-related incidents involving city employees late in the previous year. There are currently no AED machines available with City Hall to assist during medical emergencies. The $25,000 would cover purchase and ongoing maintenance of the 7 Stryker AED units. This particular brand, Stryker, was selected for City Hall to assist with the continuum of care for the patient because Strykers are currently used by fire, EMS, and EMT personnel, allowing an ease in the transfer of care, which increases the chance of survival during a medical emergency. Secondly, we're asking for a reassessment of Fund Cost Center 510100 of the general funds allocation of the department's Program Manager 2 position. Fulfillment of Program Manager 2 position would allow strategic and oversight of various yet instrumental programs across all 8 divisions within public safety. Management of the programs involved in the building, management of programs involved in the Buildings Division and the City Justice Center has recently made media headlines attracting public scrutiny. The addition of this role will help address these issues and prevent further negative publicity. The Program Manager 2 will increase visibility and transparency, policies, processes within the division. This transparency will help improve operations and lead to better processes and efficiency across the board. The oversight provided by this role will enable our office to identify potential red flags early on. This proactive approach will allow the department to address problems before they are discovered by investigative reporters, preventing crises. With the right oversight, the department can transition from reactive responses to proactive responses, improving overall program performance and public's trust. Those are the only two additions we're asking for, and that's pretty much all I have. And I will be happy to answer any questions that I'm capable of answering.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Before I pass it to the committee, what was, so project manager number 2, and then what was the other positions you say you?
The Stryker AED, the heart defibrillator.
Okay, that may be, I guess, for, I guess, the finance person. I'm just trying to figure out where in the budget. So I see the position, but I'm assuming the Stryker defibrillator would be like equipment services or?
Yeah. Hello.
Okay, so I'm just making sure, okay, health and safety, for the 25,000.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'll come back to anything I have. I'll go in order of seniority, starting with Alderwoman Sanye.
Thank you for coming before us today. Very nice to meet you. I appreciated the background. I did do some research when I heard about your appointment, and I was actually excited to see, all of your history, but specifically just the extensive background that you have in sort of just violence prevention and violence reduction and like harm intervention measures. I really appreciate it. Just you had so much work. When I looked you up, I was like, wow, this is going to be a great asset. So just wanted to commend you for your work there, and I think that's going to be a great asset for our city.
Thank you.
In regards to your budget, I don't have too many questions. I do want to just commend you. I really appreciate just kind of you just got here, and I like that you have some very specific asks already about some specific staffing positions you want to see, some specific equipment to make things, just kind of more well-rounded. It just, I think for me, especially knowing like how I felt when I first came in, I'm always impressed when I see people get right on the ball and start to identify some needs right away. And I take that as meaning, especially that you're new, that you're like listening to staff and listening to folks that came before you. I'm glad you're able to be in communication with Director Coyle. I think that's a very, positive thing. And just, in any way that I can help you in your role, happy to. In regards to the budget, I don't have anything specific. I do just want to say I'm sure it'll be a conversation later on. That's something that I've been very curious about for a long time is really within the CJC and what it would look like for us to have some kind of programming or some type of incentivizing things there, which is separate from this conversation. But just planting a seed because I know you're brand new that I like look forward to having those conversations later. I'm excited to see some of the kind of medical equipment and those types of requests there, and just think that there also needs to be a conversation about what detainees are getting access to and like recreational activities when they're in a facility, especially because they're there for such extended periods of time. But I don't have any specific questions for your budget. I appreciate your specific asks. I think it looked pretty clear to me. Thank you.
Well, just to follow up, I'm working closely with Commissioner Burris, and I share your concerns with the Justice Center. One of my positions with the police department was over auxiliary services, so I worked closely. Ms. Brown, Jamila Brown, we went over to the facility about a week ago, and we're working on some things. We're working on some exciting things out of the box that we think that will work. And I share your concerns. I really do.
Thank you.
I believe Alderman Cone is online. And jumped around a little bit, and I think he wanted to say something, being a little more senior.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have you gone through all of the committee members?
If we just, no, but going in seniority, I knew that you was on to want to mention to speak on this, so I just jumped to you as one of the senior members.
I'll wait until all the committee members have a chance, and then if you want to go by seniority afterwards, I appreciate that.
Okay, Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you, and thank you, Director. I appreciate you coming on here in this role, and thank you for your many decades of service to our city. I saw you in your presentation talked about the Program Manager 2 position that you'd like to add, and saw that it was requested. but saw that it wasn't included in the budget so far, the proposed budget for this year. So is your request that if we can find the money for that, that's something that your department would be able to use?
We had tossed around a couple things. Go ahead.
Yes, we would like that.
Could you just state your name for the, you totally fine, and then just speak into the mic. You totally fine.
Carletta Fielder, fiscal manager. So we currently have the program manager position in our budget, and it was posted. We were working on trying to fill it, and then we saw that it was removed from the budget. So as he spoke to it, there are duties that we need that position to do, and we would like it back if possible, or to stay if possible.
Okay, that's very helpful to note for us. And I saw also, one second here, looking, there's a pretty big increase in the summer youth jobs line item. I assume this is part of what I assume is a good program to get kids off, the street and having nothing to do, and not only that, but then serving a purpose for our city. But it looks like a pretty big increase there, and I was just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
So that is actually something, I think we get a percentage of tax. So normally the request is pretty much always the same, but when it goes to the budget division, since they actually know the tax amount, they give us the percentage. So that's how that number's calculated.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that explanation. That is it for my questions for now, but thank you so much. Really appreciate seeing you here. And again, best of luck in your new role.
Thank you.
Alderman Velasquez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here, Director Dace. And just a couple quick questions in the budget. I see, and this might be related to your question, Alderman Browning, the budget request on the public on the safety youth programs from the sales tax fund. Is that what we were just talking about with?
Yes.
Okay. And then just a question for my knowledge. Obviously, we've been hearing a lot in the news about the federal presidential administration's cuts specifically to violence prevention programs, and that's hit the region hard. But are there any of our programs that are federally funded specifically around violence prevention?
No, so the federal funds that we get are for our JAG program, and when I reached out to our representative, they were fine. They've been going on this whole entire time. They were not part of the more looked at and targeted.
I'm sorry, could you speak more into the mic? They're having a hard time
You
hearing
can
you.
lift the mic up too.
Yeah,
It
you can
moves.
grab the mic.
There
Is
you go.
that light green?
It is.
Okay,
It
thank
is.
you.
Sorry. So as I said, our programs were not impacted by that or have not been.
Okay, great. And can you just explain for me and probably for everybody else what the JAG program is? Because I'm sure it's not the show that I'm thinking of. That was a joke.
So
JAG.
JAG is an annual formula grant that we apply for, get a certain amount of money that, again, it's a formula grant, so they give it to us. And normally it goes to fund three main programs. There's problem properties attorneys. There's an attorney 1 and attorney 2. One works more so north, one like Dutchtown, Mount Pleasant area. There's also a night watch program that we run with the courts where police officers and juvenile officers go out to youth's homes around the peak crime hours just to make sure that they are at home. And there's also 2 criminal intelligence analysts that work in the homicide division that we also fund with that program.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have no other questions for you, Director.
Alderman Devotee.
Good morning, Director Dace. It's good to see you.
Yes.
I want to ask a question with respect to the Justice Center. It looks like the proposal for this next fiscal year was a fair significant amount over the preceding year. Can you explain the basis of that request? And I know not much was put in the budget as proposed, but can you explain the the basis of the increase?
I'll have my fiscal officer talk to you about that.
So I do not have their budget with me right now. They're probably going to be the better ones to explain that. But I do know that there was an increase in the inmate health contract. I believe they did an RFP on that. And the vendor that was selected, there was a considerable increase in that. And there were also a few requests by the interim commissioner that's over there for some personnel service type items. And I believe they'll probably speak to that.
Fair enough. I mean, I did see the note with respect to medical services, and I think food services the request was a slight bump. It appeared that a pretty significant amount had to do with personnel. And I was hoping that you could explain, and if there's somebody better to ask, we'll ask down the line. But the basis of that request, because I assume that there's a significant reason for that, right?
So I know their professional services, like I said, went up in the hopes of recruiting people to the correctional officer position. But I believe in the final, what was approved, their positions were cut. They lost a few correctional officers and a few other smaller positions. So I think they'll be the better ones to speak to that, though.
We'll do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Devotie. And we will actually have the Corrections Division coming in. Mr. Brumman won't be able to make it, but Ms. Tammy Ross will be in next Tuesday, May 3rd, where we can dive a little deeper into the corrections. Thank you, Director, for being here. And, one thing that we say kind of at the board is facts matter. And, you check me, let me know you've actually been with the city for a long time. And I want to say thank you for all your service within the police department, and excited to see ways that we can partner with some of the unique, innovative programs that sound like that you've done when policing to really bring that to a larger scale at the city of St. Louis. I do have a few questions. One of my questions you already answered. For health and safety equipment, that heart defibrillator, would that be a one item, and will that just be for City Hall, what you guys are looking, or is it like 2 or 3, or?
It's 7, and we're starting with City Hall.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 7.
We anticipate hitting all the city offices, but we're starting with City Hall.
Okay. Well, I do think that's, something I love to continue to talk with you with, because, I look at other government buildings. I know St. Louis County have like defibrillators, and you just always want to be safe than sorry. It's one of those things, 25,000, I'm sure that can kind of be found somewhere, but I also respect Paul Payne and know that he try to make everything as conservative as he can. A couple other things under wearing apparel. What is the wearing apparel? So I see a small jump from 2024 to 25 to 1,000, the same ags. Is that like uniform outfits, some cool polos? And if you could state your name one more time as a finance person for the record, so that we could have it for the minutes.
Carletta Fielder.
Carletta
Fielder.
Fielder. Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
You just said. So there were a few positions that we did not have. A program manager, coming in. There were a few other positions that we planned to get. So just so that they could have it. 'Cause a lot of times when we do community events and everything, just so we're out there and people know that we are with the Department of Public Safety. If they have any questions, ask. So,
Gotcha. Could you explain a little bit of what your employee awards and incentives is?
Oh, I'd love to. So last year, we were able to finally kick off our Director's Award. So that is an awards program where Department of Public Safety employees can nominate individuals, fellow coworkers across all of the public safety divisions that they really feel have gone above and beyond in helping the citizens. There's a committee made up of all of the different divisions of public safety, and we kind of award a few people with the Special Director's Award to just employee recognition.
Gotcha. Let me see. Well, we don't have to go into that one. Advertising. I know, I'm just curious, what does the Department of Public Safety do for its advertising? I see, like I say, a small jump from 2004 or 2024 to 25, 2000, and then the same request this year of 2,000 for advertising.
All right, I'm gonna follow along with you now.
It's on, in the book, I'm on page 250.
So in the general fund,
Yes, in the general fund,
okay.
account 1,000.
I think I have the April 29th one, so it says 2,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's always 2,000. So anytime we do, we have to do an RFP, we like to advertise it just so everybody. I think the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, sometimes St. Louis American, just so people know and can submit proposals.
Okay, and this is small. I was just curious. Like I said, in 23, I know it's like 42. 2024 is 711. Then 25, previous year 2,000, and the same request of 2,000 and 26 as well. But that makes sense. What you're saying, RFP. Last question. Well, not last question. I noticed there also has been just like a little bump in legal services. Have that been I guess, a thing where the Department of Public Safety is needing legal input or experts?
So when we have properties that are getting, so as I mentioned, we have those problem property attorneys, and when they need a hearing officer, we have those costs. So sometimes, I believe when there was a situation with rain, we had a lot of expense then, so we try to increase those legal costs, but normally, it's kind of hard to say what the legal costs will be. It just kind of depends on how many problem properties, how big it gets, whether or not we need the funds, but normally the $4,000 is sufficient. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's not.
Got it. Page 251, so the crime prevention program, which is a sales tax. So I'm assuming it looks like there's a decrease of 926,621. Is that just because, I guess, basically the sales taxes is that based on the income that you guys get off of that sales tax?
So with 1119, that's our Prop P fund. So that's always $1 million. I will say that what was submitted to the budget division is it totaled $1 million. For some reason, the new computer program, when you do these like BD1 versions, it did not total correctly.
Okay.
So, so yes, this is always $1 million per the ordinance. So it pays for a contract compliance officer, which is that top salary piece, and then all of the rest of the funds outside of the little bit for advertising for RFPs go towards crime prevention programs.
So I seen a 2,000 or last year is close to $2 million. So crime prevention always, I guess, is good to try to reduce crime.
I got it. We asked for the same 2,000 on here. There was just a issue with the.
2 questions, and then I will turn over to Alderman Cone. Can you explain a little bit more of what do you guys do with the youth program coming from the department? Like, are you going out to schools, or is that like a grant that you give to organizations for the youth program, public safety youth program?
The 1121 or the 1119?
1121.
So we have a few vendors right now because the RFP just closed on this one. So we're in the process of awarding a few. There's a variety of items that they do, St. Louis jobs. So, they're employed in a lot of different ways. Some of them are ambassadors, I believe. Youth are employed as ambassadors. So there's a variety of them. If you're interested, we could probably provide a listing of the scope of work for some of those vendors. Our OVP could also speak to those as well.
Gotcha. And I know in this year you're asking for the program manager too, which seems like it could be very beneficial, but you guys wasn't able to fill it in 2025.
So we were not able to fill it in 2025. We did do several, we had several lists that came from personnel, and we were actively interviewing for it. We just had not found the person yet, and we were still interviewing for that position. And I think there was an executive assistant position that came available, so the program manager, the person who had filled that position, is actually still in the department. So it's just kind of doing double work until we can fill that position. So it's still very much needed.
Okay. No more questions for me. Alderman Cone?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Dace, for being here today. Appreciate it, and congratulations on the new role. I don't know if I've seen you since you assumed the new role, but just want to pass along my sincere congrats. I know we worked together when you were both a commander and then promoted to major. Always had a good working relationship with you, and look forward to carrying that forward in your new role.
Thank you.
I know that you are in a new role and this is your first time going through the budget. So this is going to maybe be a little bit of education for both of us here as we go through the budget together. But just want to kind of go through a couple things that I'm seeing. One, with forgive me, I'm going through a couple hundred pages of budget here on my computer. Just from a high level perspective, how are you viewing your role with the budget, with the department heads that now report into you? So that's, police, fire, OVP, building division, et cetera. Where corrections, where are you prioritizing your time, your funding, or where do you view that you should be prioritizing time and funding right now?
Yeah, well, thanks for that question. At this point, there's not a lot of activity between public safety and the police department with the current situation. But a lot of my time, I've prioritized some of the places that we've had that have had the most issues. The Justice Center, that's been one of the biggest concerns, I think, of the new administration. Working with Doug Burris, who will be in here, I guess, sometime next week. That is my priority right now. From some of the things that I've seen throughout the other divisions, I think the Justice Center needs the most attention at this point. And after that, buildings is another priority of mine. But right now, I've been focusing a lot on the Justice Center until we can get our commissioners in those other two positions, neighborhood stabilization and violence prevention. We're basically standing pat with those two divisions right now.
Okay. I'm just going to try to do this quickly. I don't want to belabor too much time here, and I appreciate the chair giving me the opportunity to, ask questions and pick your brain on some things here. In the program budget for the fire department, the performance measures that they have listed here are fires and medical, so the runs that they make for both of those. Their goals for FY26, they have 59,000 fire runs and 56,000 medical runs. That seems high. I'm just wondering, do they include the EMS runs that the fire department makes on behalf of EMS in that fire number?
Alderman Cone, I'm being told yes. Unfortunately, I have not spent a lot of time. Again, it's only been 3 weeks. I have not had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Commissioner Jenkinson, but
Okay.
I'm being told yes.
I mean, it seems to me that we would not, that the medical runs included in the fire runs, that seems like a little bit of wonky math to me, because then you wouldn't have a total of 115,000 runs.
Right.
So, that just seems like it's something that we should be reviewing and having a conversation around. As I kind of continue through here.
Yeah, Commissioner Jenkinson will be here this evening at 3 o'clock, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying not to dive too much into questions that I know other department heads are going to be there, but I'm just, for your edification, these are things that I've asked about in the past, and so we'll probably be having a follow-up conversation with you about them, which is why I'm calling them out. I'm not going to try and grill you too much on the particulars of any of the departments that we're going to have the other department heads come in and have a conversation with us about. But excise is another department that we've had some challenges with over the years. We have at some points in time only 3 inspectors that have been out and about in the city at any given time. And so, obviously that's a challenge when you have bars, nightclubs, restaurants, et cetera, gas stations and convenience stores that often have liquor licenses as well. So I'm just kind of curious. It seems like we're keeping them pretty even from past years. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, I got a lot of fires to put out. I am focused, though, on improving personnel throughout the 8 divisions. You talked about shortages with excise. Yeah, they are, but we had shortages in all 8 except for the fire department. So I'm looking at those things. Again, we're in week 3 now, and I'm not making excuses. I'm just stating facts. We're going to be on top of all of that. Just give me a little bit of time.
Absolutely. Again, I know that you're new. I'm not trying to put too much pressure on you here, but just trying to, kind of highlight some of the things that have been, concerns from, either colleagues or constituents over the years as well. Especially, when you have situations where convenience stores, gas stations, or, bars, nightclubs have nuisances associated with them as well. And we're not able to get the appropriate level of inspections or responsiveness to address those concerns. It becomes a big problem, which weighs heavily on other teams that report into you, like the NST, the Neighborhood Stabilization Team as well. So just want to make sure that that's on your radar.
Well, yeah, I appreciate you pointing those out. We'll address them. But I think I mentioned earlier, one of my goals is for us as a public safety to work together on some things and maybe coordinate and possibly help coordinate with some of our regional partners to try to talk about some of the issues that we got. So I appreciate you bringing this to me. I will take a look at your concerns, though, definitely.
No, I know you will. You always have, so I do appreciate that. Building division, I think most of my colleagues might be chuckling now since I even mention it, but building division is woefully, in my estimation, woefully under staffed. There used to be a point director when the building division would do a survey of 1/3 of each ward every year. So in theory, the entire city, or an entire ward would be inspected every 3 years. We are no longer doing that. It is a huge, huge issue for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which is, the quality of housing that we have in the city of St. Louis will continue to deteriorate if we don't have adequate staffing to maintain those inspections. That also has an impact on things like our tax revenue and our tax base, because as properties decline and people aren't being cited for those, then of course, and particularly, vacant buildings, nuisance properties, and other properties that are owned by bad actors. It creates havoc in our communities. It contributes to population decline. It contributes to property being devalued. And for many of us that are at the Board of Aldermen and the city in general, 60% of that real estate tax goes to our St. Louis public schools. And when we're having, and lack of inspections and all of that and contributing to property value decline, it directly impacts the revenue that goes to our St. Louis public schools, and that's a huge problem. So I know that the commissioner for the building division is going to be coming in, and I'll have that conversation with him as well. But I want to make sure, as the director of public safety, that that is something that you're aware of, because we are not doing those inspections. And a lot of people would contend that even though we're doing inspections when there's a request, meaning a permit pulled, or when there's a complaint, meaning a citizen service complaint, many would argue that those aren't even being done adequately either. So building, it's a little confounding to me as well, because building division is one of the departments under your purview that actually generate revenue as well. And so we should be adequately staffing them and making sure that they have the resources that they need to do their jobs effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. There are some things that had worked in the past that for whatever reason we've gotten away from. And I appreciate you bringing that to me. I'll have a conversation with Commissioner Ware about that. And again, we're just, I mean, you all know this. You've been around. You haven't, maybe, I don't know, probably you're not 35 years like me, but I've been around, and we know that we are facing some critical issues in regard to staffing everywhere. And again, that's one of the things that I'm gonna try to do to increase staff throughout my 8 divisions, because there are places where there are untapped places where we could possibly look for quality personnel. Because again, we're in competition with everybody in the region, so we got to be we got to be aggressive, and we got to make the jobs that we have here, make them attractive to be able to get some of the quality applicants throughout the metro region.
I agree. There's some other programs that other cities have been doing that, I'd like to talk to you offline. They're not necessarily budget related, but would love to have that conversation with you at some point.
Okay.
So demolition and board up, I got some feedback earlier this year from folks in the building division that we didn't have enough money left in the current fiscal year for demolitions. The director or commissioner and I have had some conversations, and he's going to, try and help address some of that. But well, I'll just save that for a conversation with him. But as the derelict and abandoned buildings that plague our city, particularly when they are falling apart and only have 1 or 2, maybe 3 walls, they create not only attractive nuisances for our community, but they create huge public safety concerns for our city personnel, whether that's the building division or the fire department or even the police department. And so, I think trying to address those is really important. I know we've previously already done a survey. The fire department undertook that to ensure that the building division is at least aware of or the city in general is aware of, those various buildings. But more and more come online every year. And so I think we need to make sure that we're maintaining that, updating that, but more importantly, also being able to fund addressing those as well.
Yeah, I agree.
The other kind of call out in the building division, and again, I'll have this conversation with the director himself or the commissioner himself, but we have on the budget program that lead remediation is still taking place, and they have 60 units for FY24, 100 units for FY25, 75 for FY75 or 26. The previous building commissioner came before us and basically said that they're not using those funds for actual lead remediation, that they're using them to pay for inspectors in the building division. So I'm very concerned that we're actually saying that we're remediating housing of lead when that at least was told to a different committee that that's not even happening. That we're using those funds for purely inspection of homes. So the program notes actually say that 1.6 million in revenue was generated and inspected over 3,000 homes for lead. But then underneath the performance measures, it says that there were actual properties that are housing units that were remediated using the program. And in the past, we were told that that program doesn't even exist in the building division and that we're using those funds only for the inspections. So that's a pretty big call out because obviously if we're not doing that and we're reporting that we are, that's false.
Yeah. I'll have to educate myself on that. I'm not aware of what you're talking about.
Okay. So that was just background for you. That was an increase that we made in the building permit fee that was specifically supposed to go to lead remediation in homes. And when I asked the previous building commissioner about it, he indicated that we are not actually doing that and that we are using those funds to pay for inspections. The NST and CSB, I'll kind of save those questions for later. And I know you've already answered a lot of questions around the corrections division. So that really kind of concludes, kind of my questions and highlights for the budget. I know some of my colleagues already asked about the youth employment program. That was actually a program that I helped to start about a decade ago. And so I'm happy to see it continuing, and hopefully we can continue to get resources for our young people. The only other call out with respect to young people and youth programming, the JAG was brought up earlier. For those of you that don't know, the JAG is it's Justice Assistance Grant. It's a federal grant that's provided by the Department of Justice. It can be used for a variety of things, and it's in the past at least been open to applications every year that are sent out to the Board of Aldermen, through the mayor's office, through the Department of Public Safety. And in the past, Director Dace, we did use that specifically for a juvenile justice intervention program. And I think a lot of folks in the city are rightfully or wrongfully so, a little afraid of what's going on with our young people in our community right now. There's been a lot of reports of young people, teenagers, that are carjacking and doing other nefarious things that we obviously would prefer for them to have more productive lives. And so would love to sit down with you and talk to you more about what we've used those funds for in the past, because we've had some success with some of those programs as well. And otherwise, that concludes my questions and comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman. Thank you for raising those to the director. And I think, as he noted, 3 weeks in and you're hitting the ground running. This week we are focusing on public safety, so I think some of those questions I know you just highlighted, so the director can have those in his mind. But tomorrow we'll hear from the building division. The fire department is coming in on Thursday, and other public safety matters. So I appreciate you lifting those concerns to the director, and appreciate you being here, Director. One of the things is this committee will be doing differently. We'll be meeting throughout the year to address some of these things and just figure out how we can be helpful from the budgetary standpoint as a Board of Aldermen. So I'm sure you'll be back in front of us eventually, but thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. And
If you
pleasure
really,
working with you guys. I'm sorry?
go ahead. What was you saying?
No, I was saying thank you, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys.
No problem. Alderman Velasquez, I know, has a quick question.
I was interrupting him to make this a little bit longer. I just wanted to echo some of, I know the building division's going to be here tomorrow. Wanted to just say and address one of our concerns. Alderman Browning, Alderwoman Boyd, and I filed a suite of bills related to vacancy and increasing fines and fees, specifically around board ups and actually a bunch of things. But we want to just make sure that when we talked to the building commissioner, Marla, that those changes are staffed because the enforcement piece, because there's like 20-something million dollars in fees and fines that could be helpful to your, the city and your department. So I just wanted to flag that and just reiterate, of course, that I know you were concerned about vacancy, and I'm sure everybody in the public safety department is, because it affects what you do on a daily basis. But we'll also be looking at that. And we're here for any questions.
All right, well, thank you, Director, for being here. We're going to keep moving and grooving on time. We got SEMA in the building. So I know there's a presentation, which is all in our drive, if you want to follow along. And also thank you to the director team for also coming along with our safety director. Next, moving on to SEMA, we have our commissioner. Okay, sometimes I get confused between the director and the Commissioner Sarah Russell in front of us that has a presentation. Please proceed when you're ready. And if you can just state your name, your position, and if you want to introduce your team, and then proceed with your presentation.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and rest of the committee. My name is Sarah Russell. I serve as a Commissioner of Emergency Management, a division of the Department of Public Safety. With me today is my staff, Kristen Capps-Jones, who serves as our grants manager, and Kim Vandenberg, who is our public information officer. Bridget is down the hall with the comptroller's office trying to work out some details. So our whole staff is in the building right now. So moving into the presentation, I'm going to give a little bit of background before I get to the numbers, but just for everyone's understanding, the role of SEMA is to prepare the city's government, emergency responders, private agencies, and residents to prevent, respond to, recover from disasters and other emergency events. We do that working across 5 phases of emergency management, which includes prevention, preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. Everybody has their own kind of understanding of what we do. That's a very wide range of things that we have our hands in. We are also the public alert and warning authority for the city. Many of you have probably received Notify STL alerts in bulk on certain occasions of severe weather and potentially for other occasions such as water boil advisories or orders and other type of incidents. We do also upkeep the outdoor warning siren system, which has been a conversation over a number of years, and I will give you a quick update on that. We are in the process of working on a new system. We have the funding from previous year's budgets, and the engineering study portion of that should be wrapping up within the next few weeks, which will give us and BPS a much clearer picture of what we have to accomplish to physically replace the system and get it up and running. So that's exciting for us. Go to the next slide. I do want to make a note on comparisons because a lot of times we find that we want to draw comparisons to other such agencies, which for us is very difficult to do. On certain initiatives, it's easier than certainly doing an overarching comparison agency to agency for the reasons outlined on the slide. There are very few independent cities that operate without that county layer in emergency management. So if we look to augment our capabilities, we can go through mutual aid and then we go straight to the state. We don't have that county layer to say, can you send a couple people over to assist us with this? We're kind of lacking in that particular segment of our organization. Our Urban Area Security Initiative grant, which I'll get into more detail with later, it's a regional grant here in the St. Louis metropolitan area. So the guidance that's been constructed throughout the years is that the projects also will be regional. So if, to give you an example, they buy a lot of law enforcement equipment, particularly bomb and arson and Metro Air, the helicopter program. Those are shared assets. Any of those, you know, they go in St. Louis County, St. Charles County. It's a regional initiative for anti-terrorism, homeland security. It's a little more difficult for emergency management to get different projects through. So we couldn't do our mass notification tool through a UASI project because it's not regional. Everybody has their own. Our agency, and I think this is a benefit for us, has been independent. We're not part of a fire department or a police department, which some agencies are. And also, we're situated within a public safety department. Many are, but some are not. We ourselves used to be situated in the mayor's office, and in other cities such as Boston, that is still the case. So for those reasons, it's really hard to do a one-on-one comparison when we say, well, you know, what are the other cities doing? But we have looked at some ways that comparison information we know is still valuable. And if we move into the next slide, I want to talk about budget percentage. We work with the Sustainability Exchange, a group of students with Washington University. And the last project we did in the previous semester had to do with explaining the positioning of SEMA and better telling the story of what we do for opportunities like this when we're able to talk with you or we're able to talk to the public or other partners. So what they found, they looked at a group of peer agencies, Chicago, Kansas City, Denver, Pittsburgh, and a few others. And their findings were that those agencies, when they had their budget allocation, it was somewhere between 1.5% to 2% of their respective Department of Public Safety budget. In looking at our budget data, between FY 2024, 25, and now 26, SEMA has traditionally been allocated less than 0.2% of our Department of Public Safety budget. So the numbers that you see on my requested budget category is more reflective of us, number one, trying to meet the needs of the missions, those 5 categories that we're trying to accomplish for the city, and bring us up closer to that 1% share of the department's overall budget. So I wanted to kind of set that up at the beginning before we really get into the numbers and the differences. And I do want to call back to something that I said last year. This is something that a lot of emergency managers talk about. And the figure is between 2017 and 2021, there was an average of 18 days between billion-dollar disasters. So 18 days on average for our entire country between $18 billion disasters. Our last major disaster we had was the 2022 flash flooding. That was certainly not a billion-dollar disaster, but we are still managing some of the recovery to that incident. And I can tell you, having more budget and more staff to execute that process would have made it a lot easier. Thank you. So looking at this slide, again, this gives you more of a visual of just what I'm saying. This graphic I pulled from this year's budget. I did note, I don't think that the total on that graphic changed to reflect this year's budget. The total is closer to $313 million rather than $288 million. But I'll read it because I know it's kind of small. There are 3 sections within the Department of Public Safety that show a 0% budget that do have a noticeable slice on that pie chart. Civilian Oversight Board, Corrections MSI, and the Excise Office. Those have 0%, they still have a slice of the pie. SEMA isn't even on the chart. We don't even get mentioned on the chart. There's another bar graph that shows roughly the same information, and we basically are pretty even with the line. You can barely see that we exist there. When the student group compared our budget to those that they were researching, their comment was that SEMA's general budget was found to be a low outlier. I think we've got plenty of information to back that claim. Now, if we move to the next slide, please. Thank you. A little bit more about SEMA, just for the sake of knowing what we're doing and understanding where we're coming from with our lack of funding and resources. We serve the city before, during, and after disasters, no matter how big or small. If anyone is impacted by an incident, it is a disaster to them. The ground failures, the cave-in, the sinkhole, whatever we want to call them, for the people that were impacted in that area, that were concerned about the structural integrity of their home, that had to change their route, whether it was Metro having to change their route, our EMS or police departments being rerouted, or people who just parked on that street or used that street to go to work. That's an impact to them. Not quite a disaster in a lot of ways, but certainly important. If a tree falls on your house because we had a windstorm, that's a disaster. You need resources, and we have to do what we can to provide those resources. In thinking about the comparisons, everybody wants to, make these grand comparisons, but then they want to limit it because of, well, that city has a much larger population. Well, that city is also situated along a major river. They have large transportation hubs. They see thousands and millions of visitors a year, and they're preparing for the exact same threats that we're trying to prepare for and mitigate against and be able to respond to. So we've been getting kind of a budget, or we've been getting a deal here, right? We're not spending a lot of money, and we're still getting some of these services. But we can do better, and that's what I'm here to ask, is that we get help to do better. We're not doing shabby. I'm going to get to that too, but we could do a lot more. And I will read the bottom of this slide because it's, again, kind of small. The City Emergency Management Agency serves the city of St. Louis before, during, and after disasters. The SEMA staff is always ready to meet any challenges head-on and to support our partners as they work to accomplish their objectives during operations. We consistently work out of our normal capacity with less than adequate resources while trying to meet the changing priorities and needs, while also being mindful of long-term goals and capabilities readiness. So we're always ready to go. We can all fit in one car, but we will get there and we will help to the best of our capacity. All right, a little bit about grants. I'm not going to go, super deep into the weeds because everybody's been seeing the federal grant stories play out in the news and the executive orders and other guidance. The Department of Homeland Security released updated grants guidance last week that was concerning to us in our office. We are monitoring for all of the latest updates because we're in the middle of projects. We've been allocated funds. We're trying to use funds from previous grants inside and outside of disasters. That has been very challenging recently. We're working with ITSA. We got a cybersecurity grant almost 2 years ago, and we're trying to make sure that if we make the expense, that we're going to be able to spend the federal match funds that we've been awarded. And that's something similar for our hazard mitigation grant program project to do property acquisition and offer some of those most critically impacted by the flash floods in 2022 an opportunity for a buyout. And that has been slowed considerably because of the off-again, on-again grant processes at the federal level. So again, we need to make sure that we have agreed to a certain amount of a federal match, a local match, and that by proceeding, we're going to be able to get that federal match. Otherwise, we're going to be looking for additional funds, approximately 75% more than what we've already agreed The bottom line on grants is our grant opportunities are shrinking. They have been for a number of years, but now the competition and the restrictions are increasing rapidly. Looking at our numbers for this year's budget, again, the request is significantly higher than what has been entered into the proposed numbers. This is a broad overlook at that, and in the next slides, I want to get deeper into a few of those in particular. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So looking at our account number 521500, health and safety supplies, our utilization of these funds historically, we've had a higher amount in that budget line. Sometimes we've had lower, sometimes we've had a higher one, but we haven't been able to spend it. In a lot of those cases, when the budget, starts in July, SEMA's ready to go. We've got ideas for programs that we want to execute, and then something happens. Typically a flood, maybe a storm, something that either gets close to or actualizes in a declaration. The last two most notable being COVID, and then followed by our flash flooding in 2022. When those type of declarations happen, almost everything else in the SEMA operation ceases, and we have to focus on that, whether it's from a paperwork perspective. I don't know, Carletta's still here. Carletta used to be the go-to back before she deserted us for the director's office and to be a fiscal manager. I like to say that she learned some of that paperwork management at SEMA because she was doing a large lift of that paperwork for these disaster declaration projects that were developed to get reimbursement. So when that happens, we can't order regular stuff. We don't have time to solicit bids and continue to do other projects. We have to focus on the disaster. So sometimes that kind of becomes an issue. Well, if you look at 1 year, why'd you only spend a few $100s? Well, because we were in the middle of COVID and we were doing more than 70 projects related to getting reimbursements for every vaccination or testing clinic, sanitizing City Hall, building plexiglass dividers, all of that came through SEMA. So the request for this year, we put in a request for $12,000, and there's a couple of reasons behind that. This was a time where we need to rebuild and replenish some of our stocks of our outreach materials that we do have. But the other side of that is with the changes at the federal level, FEMA provided us with a number of resources, printed resources. We could go in and submit an order to the FEMA warehouse, and they would send us a dozen boxes, heavy boxes of printed materials that then we could take and put in the rack downstairs in City Hall, the rack in 1520, where coincidentally, when children come out from getting lead testing, they like to get a SEMA activity book or a preparedness Pedro coloring book, which they like to get that after they've been tested and they're upset and crying. So that's a tool that helps everyone at 50, at least on a little bit. But it also gives us the materials that we take into the community at things like the Earth Day Festival, Pride Fest, Annie Malone, Fair St. Louis. In 2019, when we were set up in our mobile command post at Park along River des Peres during flooding for 3 weeks, we had materials to give to anyone who stopped to talk to us while they were out utilizing the park, walking their dogs, walking their baby, watching their kids play on the playground, or if they just had questions about what are you doing here or what's going on with this flood water. We had stuff to give them to help prepare them and educate them on how to keep their families safe. Those resources are drying up, and my guess is they will be eliminated completely. No more freebies. So we're going to have to absorb some of that printing costs. And if we find that our needs aren't being met by what is being offered, we may have to develop them in-house and print them ourselves as well. So twofold on that. It was time for us to replenish, and we may need to get to making our own stuff a lot more frequently than we have in the past. I will add that in the past 12 months, we've also worked with the Office for New Americans on doing some PSA work that's translated for different languages that are used within our community. And we're looking to expand on that as well, and that I hopefully will also include some of those printed resources specific for our community. So the received proposed back is $2,000 for a reduction of $10,000. $2,000 is not going to take us very far. The next slide is looking at account 560001, which is used to pay for computer software services. This request was entered for $8,100, and $2,000 is what was returned. So what I've put together is a list of our software licenses, which totaled at this point $7,036 and some change. Now we do have the main account 560000 does have $2,700 in it, which we can combine and use that as well, but we still fall short of the bills we already have, and it doesn't leave any room for outfitting a new computer for a computer that should go out of service, or a new employee, or a new computer on the command post, something like that. So that was why we had a little bit of overage in that over what you see on the screen. But that's what that looks like. That's probably one of our most concerning accounts. And then the next one really gets into staffing, so personnel services. Our FY26 request has a couple of layers to it. One that I have talked about thoroughly last year, which has to do with the changes in our emergency management performance grant. That is a grant that has in the past provided funds not only for subsidizing part of our staff salary, but certain benefits, travel, emergency operation costs, and at one point, I think it paid for a cell phone line as well, the one cell phone line that we had at that point. All of those erroneous phone, travel, office supplies, all of that's been cut out for a number of years. Last year, the past 2 years, we got word that we were going to be held to the language in the grant itself, which only allows for an emergency management director or commissioner is fine, an assistant director or commissioner, and the administrative assistant. The way that they're accomplishing that is each of those positions, we're getting a reimbursement at 50% of the salary for each of those positions. And the emergency management specialist and public information officer are not in the grant guidance. So essentially, they're going to be from the grant, but they're going to do it slowly. So right now, we're in the middle of that. Their plan from the state is to reduce that salary amount by 25% each year, which at this point, it's 25% of the salary for PIO and emergency management specialist is all the reimbursement that we're getting. What is in the budget documentation that has been presented shows no change really over last year. When I look at the staff itemization sheet, it's still at 50% from the grant and 50% from the general fund. So none of what I put in my request was reflected. There was no amendment made to it after I brought it up as an issue. So I do want to draw attention to that. I also want to tell you a little bit about the importance of the positions that I did request that were not added to the budget also. The first being a program coordinator. So the program coordinator position was requested based upon a security assessment, safety assessment that I did last year with the Department of Homeland Security. And this role would manage the program of emergency preparedness, safety, and security for municipal buildings to include written plans, checklists, incident reports, training coordination, exercise planning, process improvement oversight, and managing threat and risk assessments. So if you're familiar with the fire alarms activations that have happened, it would be someone from our office that is dedicated to that process, to further educating and communicating with our liaisons, the emergency management ambassadors from each office in City Hall, to working with the Director of Public Safety's office, our partner divisions, police, fire, and EMS, as well as BPS on the systems that are in place, the functionality, the human factors side of that. We know BPS is managing the system side of it. They manage the install, the acquisition of the system itself. But there's a big people factor to that, and certainly a culture around safety and preparedness within City Hall that needs a more gentle hand, let's say. And that's what this role would be able to do. We do keep up emergency operation plans for the municipal buildings, specifically City Hall and 1520 Market being the biggest ones. And then we have a template that can be applied to some of the smaller that are far less occupied. The person would also focus on that, as well as setting up training on those plans and exercising those plans like we do with a fire drill or a tornado drill or an earthquake drill, evacuation drill. And one of our priorities this year that has fallen behind schedule is working in a reunification plan within that set of documents. So for that day that we evacuate City Hall, but we can't come, we need to be ready for that, and that's something this person would focus on. The next position is an executive assistant 2. This position would be to assist the SEMA commissioner in executing the SEMA mission, helping to coordinate daily activities, increasing the separation of duties, expanding operational delegation of authority, allowing for more redundancy within the SEMA operation, and ensuring more professional emergency management capacity during incidents. That was something that was in all of the after-action notes following the 2022 flash flooding, was that SEMA can't do everything the way they're outfitted. They can't do it all on their own, that I, in particular, cannot do everything on my own. So this works to, number one, expand our capacity greatly, bringing in another level of expertise from the top end to be able to look at some of our most critical projects and operations. When we get into an incident, we will have more capacity to, number one, manage and be in the EOC, but also be else called to be at the same time. The other piece with this is if this position was fulfilled, I would make the ask through the Emergency Management Performance Grant that this be allowed as the assistant manager within that grant documentation, so that we could try and seek 50% reimbursement that we're going to lose from the other 2 positions with no plan to amend that. The next positions would be 2 additional emergency management specialist positions. We only have 1 on our TO now, and I forever will argue that that person cannot be a specialist. You can't specialize in all of emergency management at the same time effectively. So we requested 1 to focus on planning. This would be a specialist with the capacity to focus the majority of their time to drafting, refining, updating, and providing education and exercise opportunities on our collection of city emergency management plans. They are plentiful. We've got the ones specifically for the buildings. We've got regional plans that we contribute to. We've got our city emergency response framework, which guides all of the responsibility roles to manage an incident within the city. There are 15 supporting annexes to that particular plan and a number of just other additional supporting annexes. Our access and functional needs specific plan, and there's a number of other plans as well. And finally, the emergency management specialist position focusing on continuity and risk. Again, this would be a specialist with the responsibility of developing a city continuity working group, a project management plan, coordinating training and planning, mentoring individual departments and agencies through the planning process, and maintaining updating schedules for existing plans. Emergency plans are typically supposed to be reviewed every 1 to 2 years. That is a goal that we would like to achieve. With our current staff, it is all but impossible to do so. This role will also be the primary point of engagement for city and regional threat hazard identification risk assessment process, or THIRA, and will coordinate CEMA participation in THIRA reviews by external partners such as hospital systems and educational institutions. In addition, both of these emergency management specialist positions will be available to support other CEMA goals and add to that professional emergency management capacity during incidents. All right, next slide is, I want to not just come at you with doom and gloom and needs, but also give you at least a few of our most notable accomplishments during FY25 to this point. We do have a new emergency management specialist that will be starting mid-June. This is to replace our former emergency management specialist who left us the week of Thanksgiving. So we are very much looking forward to that addition. I can report that the ARPA funds were allocated by the December 31st, 2024 deadline. Our ARPA division had a big achievement with that deadline being met. And their work does continue into this next phase of, now we've allocated it, now we have to make sure we spend it and spend it according to our plan. So they are very busy as well. We did close out Missouri Disaster 4490, which is the COVID-19 incident. Again, Carletta started it. Thank you for all of that work, and happy to be able to tell you it is now closed out. And that's about on par. Whenever we start a disaster, I always tell people that we just started a 5-year clock. So it was right on time. We are also nearing closeout on DR 4665, which is the 2022 flash flooding. And it can very certainly make me a liar if they close that out before 5 years. That'd be true. We did break ground along with the rest of DPS on the new PSAP and EOC. I am the steady reminder that there is an EOC in that project as well. CEMA, our offices, our Emergency Operations Center, everything we have crammed into a few small spaces right now. Looks forward to having a new home as soon as that facility can be completed. We are in the process right now of using our capital funds from last year to order new radio equipment for our emergency management mobile command vehicle, the Commissioner's Response Unit, and the Joint Information Center, which is adjoining to the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center. These radios provide us capability to, number one, monitor or have available frequencies to people reporting to the EOC or the JIC, people that come and work on the mobile command post, which is a regional asset. So other partner agencies across the region utilize that as well. The radios that are in that truck were in the truck when it was first built about 13 years ago. So for a piece of technology that's pretty out of date, and they're not able to be encrypted. So that's been rather prohibitive in the past year or so. We've also upgraded the data service in EMA1 and replaced a command suite computer and 2 printers vehicle. So at an age of 13 years, we're taking some good steps to keep the technology fresh and keep the truck operational and relevant. Some of you may have remembered back in last summer when the U.S. Army came to the city, we worked for over a year to host and plan that exercise. That was to simulate a major earthquake on the New Madrid Fault. So that was a very good point of visibility. It was a great couple of days to work with our federal, state, and local partners. It was well received all around and was really a good opportunity for us to have that. I believe we were the 6th time that they did that exercise, and I think we were the 5th city. I think they did it in maybe Philadelphia or Detroit twice. Detroit's their home base, so it was nice that they offered and we were able to do that. Our work with Air Collaborative. Air Collaborative is a program that I learned about when the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster had their conference here in St. Louis 2 years ago. I had a conversation after their presentation, and we were able to, Air Collaborative secured a grant to allow them to come in and work with us as a city to learn about their program, which is a design of a workshop and the capability of putting on these workshops, which engage community members and give them the skills to identify and work up a business plan for a project to lend resiliency to their community. So rather than have a disaster hit and then we as the government go in and say, here's what was broken, we're going to put it back just like it was, we go through all the effort, we utilize the funds and the resources to put the thing back, and then the community's like, yeah, we didn't use it in the first place. So this gives us the opportunity to partner more closely at the ground level with community members to better prioritize such projects. We are planning a workshop in the coming weeks that will be internal to our city government organization to aid in collaboration between departments and further project development and collaboration outside of just the workshop. So this has been an interesting partnership between SEMA and the Planning and Urban Design, which may not necessarily seem like two of the best friends in city government, but I assure you it works, and we're very much looking forward to expanding this project. And finally, our Emergency Financial Empowerment Grant Project. That's a project that we are entered into. Again, we solidified a grant from the Cities for Financial Empowerment, along with the Treasurer's Office, the Office of Financial Empowerment, to put on programming specifically to help our community better prepare for disasters financially. So we have just selected a contractor to support the project development and so those are our accomplishments, at least a few of them. Here is our QR code. If somebody is not getting Notify STL alerts for local hazards, please feel free to scan it, share it, tell all your friends, tell people who aren't your friends. We want everybody to sign up. So that is my presentation.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Director. Going in line of, Commissioner, going in line of seniority, I will start with Alderwoman Tonye for any questions.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your very in-depth presentation. I actually really appreciated it and learned new things about what you all are up to. The question that I have is really about the two things that you pointed to. I guess the general question, I know you spoke about working on making sure that there are language translations that are available in some of your services. I'm very excited to hear that. I would love to just hear more detail about that. Are you guys targeted any specific? Obviously, there's a ton of programs and a ton of just a lot of work being done in that sector. So I'm curious about how have you guys chosen which things you're working on translating? Are there specific services that you found that the international immigrant population is, using? Just curious about how how that has gone and how it's going.
Okay. So it's not something necessarily new that we're doing. It's a new way that we're doing. So FEMA did for a number of provide us with a lot of their materials in certain languages. The languages that they offer weren't necessarily the top languages that we have in use in our community. So they didn't always match up just right. So we have those materials and we have made those available for a number of years. In working with Gilberto, we were able to record an initial PSA last year, and it was focused on public alert and warning. So it was very brief, and it let people know, here's what SEMA is, here's what, what Notify STL is if your phone goes off. Just a kind of an introductory understanding of why we're sending the messages, who we are, hopefully, giving them enough information to trust us. In setting up the recording of those PSAs, he was able to select community members that are well regarded and respected and trusted to be able to deliver those messages. So if you look at those recorded PSAs, they're coming from community members. And we recorded 5 different languages. And as we were wrapping up the 5th one, I did have to tell Gilberto that, we should probably record this in English too. So the English one was actually the last one that we recorded. That's why I did it, and we didn't have, some other notable talent like the other languages that we did. The majority of those were selected by him and his work with the different communities. We've always had a list working with the International Institute, trying to keep an updated list of the most widely used languages in the city. We've tried to work and press FEMA for some additional languages to be added to their list that they would give us materials in. That didn't really happen until they came in with the vaccine clinic at the Dome, and they started to bring in much more thoroughly translated materials at that point. So in the most critical incidents, they did bring in additional languages, but again, in those warehouse easily ordering resources, they were very limited. So looking to move ahead, really expanding the knowledge of SEMA and what we do, emergency procedures, hazards, and other resources in the community and online for people to learn more in their native language so that it's easier to understand and reduce the likelihood of misunderstandings.
And then in your presentation, you mentioned a reduction of federal support from the Department of Homeland Security. And there's a $10,000 difference between what you requested and what is being proposed. Do you mind telling us if that budget was to pass through, what does that look like? What type of health and safety supplies or outreach measures would you not be able to do if the $2,000 was the budget?
Sure. So right now we've had a number of successful events where we've had some items that we were able to distribute, and we're looking through, for example, our EFE grant at opportunities to buy either weatherproof or just like a simple bank bag to be able to give residents to help them with protecting their documents, having their documents together, or even if they're able to, having cash on hand for a disaster, knowing that if we have a catastrophic disaster, power may be limited, bank access for using your card will be limited, and people oftentimes like to have some cash on hand. So it's some of those giveaway items. For the past year, one of our hot giveaway items has been a whistle, so that when we go out and we're encouraging people to start building an emergency kit, we're giving them a whistle so that they can get started. A whistle is a key piece for an emergency kit. I don't know how many times we repeated this at Earth Day, but it's much easier to make a loud noise by blowing in a whistle than it is to yell after a disaster. Plus, you don't want to potentially be breathing in dust and debris in the case of like a tornado or an earthquake where there's been some sort of collapse. So it's It's a real cheap and easy fix, but we're serving large communities, so we've bought a lot of whistles.
Yeah, I think with global warming and we've kind of already seen some of the worst storms we've seen in a while. I think, it's definitely an important conversation, especially in combination with expected decreased funding from the federal government. So, I think that's of interest. My next question is just about, I know you mentioned some of the software that wasn't funded, and you have some of the specific software that's listed out here. And so you mentioned that, based off the proposed budget, you would not have enough to pay for your current tools that you have. And I'm curious what the tools that I see listed here seem pretty simple to me, like Canva, DocuSign, Zoom. They seem very simple. Are these things that you're saying that if the budget goes as through, you would have to make cuts to some of these like simple software tools?
That is the potential. So the top software item on there is Salamander. There's Salamander and there's Salamander Live. So there's actually two different charges that we for that. The annual, the $4,000 charge is for the entire suite or program, and that does all of things from resource tracking, inventory management, as well as the credentialing that we use, which provides us and our partners with an ID that we can use to check into the Emergency Operations Center. We can also use it to check out equipment to us so that we know who has what. And this is a more widely used platform. So when I go to St. Louis County and I go to their EOC, I don't have to have them hand enter my information or give them ID. They can scan this card that we printed on the same system, and I'm in their system, so they know who I am.
So if you had a priority, well, I guess also I'm looking at the DocuSign and Zoom. I don't know. I think those are very basic functions that offices also need to, function properly and effectively. But if you had a priority to pick out of this list, it would be the Salamander that would be the priority for you.
It's the biggest charge, and we have made other investments in that. So we have a specific computer. We have a couple of very specific printers, one that prints IDs, one that prints thermal Tyvek labels that we can put on equipment. It'll print little gym or library cards that go on your key ring so that you can track very small equipment or vehicle keys. So we have put, a pretty sizable investment in that tool.
Okay, thank you.
As Vice Chair, I'll take over here for a second, and I'll be up next anyway. So good to see you, and really appreciate everything that SEMA does for our city. It strikes me that SEMA exists to be there for disasters when they happen, and yet, as we all know from managing our own households, sometimes we don't think about those things until they happen. But as a city, it's our responsibility to be there and be ready for the worst. And it strikes me that when the federal government is doing these cuts, it is making us less safe. And so coming from the Law and Order Party and everybody else who tries to say that they're doing this for our safety, it still strikes me incredible that they continue to make moves that make us all less safe. I'm curious what you're seeing in terms of federal government money that used to come to us that's being cut. How much funding are we losing in total, and is there enough of an increase to match what we're losing from sources?
So there's a couple of different funds that we have, right? The Urban Area Security Initiative, while the impact to SEMA directly is somewhat limited. We get some funding and have for a number of years to support our training and education, exercising. So we produce a number of regional exercises that those of us from the city can and some of us do participate in. They're planned by contractors and groups of our peers from the region. It also funds the Fusion Center, which does a lot of law enforcement primary oriented intelligence work. And that is a big benefit for us as well. They're a good partner of ours. We haven't got a great deal of equipment from that grant for a number of years. The EMA-1 mobile command post vehicle is the most notable piece of equipment that we have gotten. But it doesn't give us a large equipment and financial benefit at this point. I think when I started around 2010, the total award to our region was closer to 14 or 15 million dollars, and now I think at the end of the day we're getting down to low single digits, and that's if it continues. The other thing, you know, looking at some of the guidance that's coming out, that Department of Homeland Security grant guidance, there's some things written into it that I think are going to be challenging for our city and our region. So that's going to be a big thing to navigate in the coming months is, you know, if we turn in an application, will they even look at it? Unless, you know, we adhere to whatever guidance they're putting out. And I know that's a big concern for a lot of people, but we're watching every day, waiting for the next thing to drop so that we can keep up and see, like, where's this going to hit? You know, and just like any other hit to us, we don't have the size of a budget where it's easily absorbed. You know, some people look at a cut in one account and they can pull it from somewhere else and go with a little bit less. But our numbers are so low that, you know, we got an email last week to add one of the softwares this year that we didn't really know anything about. And we're told there's going to be a bill for $130. What account do you want it coming out of? And we said, well, that account is only supposed to have $2,000 in it next year. And we've already got, you know, several thousand already scheduled to come out of that we won't have covered. So why are we adding another $130 that we don't know anything about? We did get an understanding of that, and it seems like it's a good thing that we're supposed to do. So we want to try and do that as well. The EMPG grant, it's been being cut for a number of years. The funding is just going down. You know, the UASI grant was implemented after 9/11, which fortunately has been, you know, a long ways behind us now. But the trend I hate most about emergency management is typically you don't see funding go up until you've had an incident and a big incident and a life costing incident. I don't like that. I don't think we should do that. I would certainly, you know, rather us find a way to have the finances we need to keep people safe instead of being reactive and responding to a terrible day.
I completely agreed. And, you know, I think when you consider that reactive approach of waiting until we've lost something, that's then a loss for the city and weakens our ability to respond in the future. And so, yeah, prevention is the best thing we can do. And, you know, I was just having this conversation with my colleague this morning about like how much of, you know, budget, like what should the amount be that we get concerned about a certain budget if it's out of whack? And, you know, 10K, is it 25K, is it 500K? And looking at your budget and the way you're describing it, you know, you're asking for another 10,000 for just health and safety supplies. So if we can find 10,000 somewhere, it would be beneficial to you. I'm wondering, you described a few different positions, and while I would love to try to find funding for all of those for you, if you could pick one that would be more helpful than the other, which one would it be?
That's tricky. You know, obviously an executive assistant helps all of us. It helps me directly. It helps us then all to be more effective at what we're doing. It also would enable us to continue, hopefully to continue getting those emergency management performance grant funds. But when I look at the program coordinator, that position would give us a dedicated person to look at the safety of our municipal buildings, which affects all of our city employees, all of our constituents that come visit, people that come to get services, to get marriage licenses, to talk to excise about their liquor license. Anyone that comes in this building or uses this building, the continuity of our government, of this building being able to continue to function and continue having people come to do those things, that, to me, is also a huge priority. What helps us operationally, those emergency management specialists, they're the boots on the ground that do the work every day. We've been trying to do that with one person, and it's very difficult. That one person up until November was spending a lot of time working on city hall alarms and emergency management ambassadors in city offices to make sure that we have them trained and ready to help us help everyone else in the building to understand emergency plans and what to do when something happens, when the alarm goes off, or when, they hear something else that causes them to need to take a protective action.
Thank you. That's helpful. And like I said, I think we're going to try to look where we can find some money. I think it's important to be prepared. Just on another note, last year we accepted a grant for cybersecurity, and I was wondering how that's going, if it's been implemented, and if we've received that money and been able to spend it.
It's being worked on. I talked to Kristen about that earlier. I believe we have had the funding, we have had the money in the general fund for quite some time. We've been trying to work with the previous comptroller's office to get the account set up. I think once we get all of our city paperwork in order across all the many departments, the actual execution of it will be relatively quick. IT already has the knowledge of what they're going to buy with the funding. It'll just be executing that purchase and then for them to actually install the equipment. So it's been a lot of hurry up and wait, or we're asking for this, and no, you need to talk to this person, and no, you really need to talk to them, and a lot of that. So hopefully that's getting cleared up. I know that's where Bridget was before she joined us, was talking about some of our intricacies of accounts with the comptroller's office.
Excellent. Well, let us know if we can help with that. We certainly know how difficult it is to spend money sometimes, especially when you don't have a lot of people. And it really does concern me that your entire team can fit in one car, because what were to happen if that one car got in an accident or something?
We didn't all ride in the same car over
Okay,
here.
good.
We have some continuity plan about us, yeah. We
but
don't like to
still.
get on the same elevator at police headquarters, the whole thing.
That's a good idea to have a backup plan, but also it does speak to, like, if we added 1 or 2 positions, it would almost increase your capacity by 50%, which is crazy for 1 or 2 positions, but that's just where we're at. I certainly don't feel comfortable. Well, let me rephrase this. I feel great with you all as our SEMA department. I think you're doing great work. I feel like you do the best with what you have, and that's exactly the kind of people we need in those positions. But I also don't feel comfortable with such a small team responsible for covering emergency situations for a city of 280,000 people. So I want to make sure that we are prepared, because as we look at a world that seems to be less stable with each passing day, it is likely that there are incidents that could happen where we would need an emergency response. As we look at climate change, we look at issues where we just had the wettest April on record, which thankfully our infrastructure seemed to handle. I didn't hear of many cases of flash flooding, but knowing that there are infrastructure needs that are still catching up with the amount of weather we're getting right now, I want to make sure that you have everything you need. So I really appreciate your very, very in-depth presentation today, and don't have any more questions for you. I want to say thank you again.
All right, thank you.
Alderman Velasquez.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't have a whole lot of questions. I think my colleagues have covered a lot. I just want to say, one, thank you for all the work that you do and your team does. You clearly punch harder than your weight as like the team. I was just looking, and one of the things I know St. Louis is unique in its structure. All well It looks like Baltimore might be the city that is most comparable to us in lots of ways as an independent city, but it looks like they have, just want to state on the record that their emergency management budget, if I'm looking at it right, is 2.7 million, down
That's
from
probably right.
2.9. So that is just a, I think as we're talking about it, a good point for comparison. And then I'm just for our understanding, given our unique structure, but also the context of for the region, the other smaller municipalities in St. Louis County, they're covered essentially by St. Louis, their emergency management agency, right? I know we're in the city, but I'm just sort of asking.
Right, so St. Louis County is different in a lot of ways. So they do have the St. Louis County Office of Emergency Management. It is a division within their police department, within County PD. And they do oversee emergency management for a number of the municipalities and functions. But just like everything else in St. Louis County, there are certain municipalities that have their own standalone emergency manager. And it may be somebody that, again, is out of an executive or elected's office or a police or fire department within that municipality. So our emergency management committee meetings for the region will have more than just, someone from St. Louis County. There may be someone, from Washington, Missouri, or Fenton, Manchester, Webster Groves, somewhere, something like that will participate as well.
And I know this is a conversation I think we're all having. Is there room for additional, no, this is a budget meeting, but is there room for additional collaboration with the region as far as, obviously if something affects the city, this, I believe, really affects the region, right? So,
Right.
why you have this budget that's for us alone, in reality, we tend to serve the region.
Right, so that's one of the reasons, like the UASI funding that I've mentioned a few times, that drives a lot of regional work. And that is typically tailored towards anti-terrorism, topics of homeland security and things like that, security. And that does drive a lot of our regional level work. But we also have the river, which drives another component of regional work. So I'm on the Area Maritime Security Council, which oversees safety and security operations on the river. That includes a different group of people. So emergency management, law enforcement, industry, people that work on the river or near the river or transport things on the river. That's another group. So we have a lot of good regional partners because there are so many things that affect across borders, right? So I'll use the December 10th tornado that hit the Amazon warehouse. We were all monitoring that as it came across the state. We were fortunate in the city that we did not have tornadic damage. We had some smaller impact across the city, but certainly nothing to the scale that Edwardsville or Madison County, Illinois did. So once we had really secured our incident for the night, they were still just getting started. The next morning, again, we have the truck, which is the regional asset. We were able to take that over and get it set up for them to utilize. We were there kind of on a standby capacity. If they needed us to do something, we could assist with it. But also we were taking notes for how to improve our regional standing. What are other things that we needed to have? Being on scene and recognizing that there was issues with coroner's office personnel getting to where they needed to because they didn't have the right PPE. That became a regional initiative on the Mass Fatality Planning Committee as well. We were able to bring that to the table, and PPE is being slated to be purchased for the region so that will not be an issue again. So we do have that collaboration. We can do mutual aid just like police and fire. It just looks different for us. During the flood of 2022, we did benefit from mutual aid. I had an emergency manager, the deputy emergency manager for Franklin County, and staff from St. Charles County, and we had an incident management team made up of people from all over our region that came in to help us. We also had someone who I asked personally that ran the SLU Emergency Management Program and is a member of the U.S. Coast Guard that came in to be an advisor and a mentor to the people that traditionally had no business being in a role seated in the EOC to function, but had to be there because we didn't have the staff and we didn't have other liaisons to fill those roles. So they needed just-in-time training and someone to really mentor them. And I brought in that volunteer to do that. So we make things work, but in something that is truly catastrophic, all of those people are going to be working in their own agencies. And without the traditional, what we've been used to, we call the state and the state calls the feds. And what happened in 2022 is we got a lot of FEMA people that came in and set up an office here in the metropolitan region. They were on the ground going door to door. They were setting up public events and supporting us in getting damage assessment information, personal information for people that were impacted, and initiating programs to assist them for their impact, as well as people that came to work with us on our internal impact or public assistance, which was damage to the street department administration building, the loss of a fire truck, damage to some fire stations that flooded, and some other things. So those are all things that we're looking at today, that right now there's not a mechanism for us to kind of absorb that. And that's one of the things that's most challenging, is the one at the federal level to reassess the role of FEMA and push the work and the need for funding down to the state and local level. I will say, if you feel confident that the state of Missouri is prepared to absorb that and will come in and support us to those same levels, we may not be looking at as bleak of an outlook that we are. But I don't like to rely on that. I would rather us be more prepared at our local level. All disasters begin and end locally. And that is just the way that emergency management works. We're the first ones here, and we're still here when it's done. We do all the work in between. We've just been reliant on other partners that may no longer be there.
Final question. Is there, and I don't know if this exists, but is there like a risk assessment, and if, in regard to if we are underfunded, how big of a risk that is?
Not specifically right now, because things are so fluid and literally can change from day to day. We have risk assessments for all the other things, all the other usual hazards that we look at and plan for. But because that changes so frequently, it's literally kind of a moment-to-moment huddle as soon as something is released, that we're all looking at it and then kind of gather around and think about the impacts. But there's so much that continues to change or is just unknown at this point that it's really hard to assess that.
Thank you.
Alderman Devoti.
Commissioner Russell, thank you for your detailed report. I appreciate the education this morning, so thank you. You began your presentation by talking in terms of your mission, and you talked about the 5 aspects of employing that mission, one of which is response. You made reference to the sinkholes that we recently had in North St. Louis, and then you talked in terms on an individual level. If a tree fell down and fell through somebody's house, it would be a disaster for them. At least that's my memory of one of the analogies you gave. From an educational perspective, can you talk about your agency's role in that individualized response? And here's what I have in my mind. There has been a lot of attention to the sinkholes that are in the streets, but I know in my ward, with the rain that we've had, that in the 5th ward alone, there are 3 sinkholes that affect alleys. So they're not in the street, they're not affecting everybody, but they are very personal. They're a disaster of sorts to the folks who live around those sinkholes. What is the role of SEMA in that situation?
So one of the primary roles that we have, being a division of public safety, is Again, the public alert and notification, but also education and making available resources. So one of the things that we did, and I was able to go out with Alderman Aldridge on Cass Avenue, was getting information from the city perspective to the residents in that area. First priority being safety. Please stay away from the holes. If you see another hole opening up, please report it so that we have the benefit of knowing it's there so that we can assess it, see if it should be something that the city's responsible for, or if it's another function that's responsible for it. In this case, it was MSD. So then we also have that role of liaison of, we work with MSD. Having their updates and being able to relay that information, making the residents aware that, hey, MSD is doing the repairs. So if you want questions from them, it's a lot of relationship. It's a lot of networking and supporting what's going on. But also, when a street department director calls and says, we've closed this street down, there are services that need to be rerouted, internal and external. Other groups of people that need to be notified. That's part of what we do. In the example of the school shooting at CVPA, the first call that I made was to our medical operations center duty officer. That's a single point of contact that changes every month. I called that person and they initiated a message to all of the area hospitals so that they could start leaning forward and looking at their hospital bed capacity if they needed to be able to put in surge protocol in the likelihood that they needed to accept large quantities of patients. It's those type of supporting things typically that happen, but also there's our emergency activation process too. If it's something that's going to require that level of response, we may be looking to call in 40 or 50 people to come sit in our emergency operations center, and we're the ones that make sure the screens work, make sure people can get in the building and up to the 6th floor of police headquarters, make sure they have anything they need to be able to connect or print or have paper or anything like that. And then have that structure. If we need to declare, we work with the mayor's office to make sure that happens. If we know right away that we're gonna need bigger support, that we can help them make the ask to the state, to the governor, and that they then have whatever they need. In the case like 2022 flash flooding, then there becomes the damage assessment, the early damage assessment that we can tell, have we met our threshold to even ask the governor to request a presidential declaration. That's another thing that's under review, by the way. So in the flooding of 2022, our threshold was about $1.4 million. So we needed to be able to look around St. Louis, and I needed to be able to take FEMA representatives and show them that the city had damage of at least 1.4 million. The current document that's floating around says that they want to increase that ×4 so that we'll declare less disasters. It's not going to stop the disasters. They're still going to happen, but they want to declare less.
Understood. Let's talk about the personnel aspect of this. Because I think like Alderman Browning, that struck me when I reviewed the budget of your particular agency. And I was impressed by your presentation. I believe it was on page 11 of your document, where you outlined the ideal needs, or maybe it's the necessary needs of your agency. I was struck with respect to the program coordinator. And I know you got into more details in response to Alderman Browning, but there was discussion of, from a very, very basic standpoint, of reviewing emergency plans. One of the things you told us was that the ideal would be that the plans are reviewed on a 1 to 2 year basis. Well, let's talk about where we are today. At current staffing level, how often are emergency plans reviewed?
Very infrequently. So we converted the overarching plan from an emergency operation plan format, a more traditional plan format that everybody may have found in 3-inch binders somewhere in an office. We converted it to a framework plan in 2016.
You used a term of art, framework plan. What is that?
So framework, it kind of gives you more of a deconstruction of the plan. It's easier to absorb. When I talked about the ESFs, the support functions, those are categorized, and each one of those plans really should be farmed out to the primary leader for that plan. So hazmat being one example. While we would have a hand in writing and contributing to that plan, the owners of that plan probably should be the fire department. There's mass care, there's hospital, there's 15 different functions in that category alone. We've managed all of those. The one that pertains to us the most, I started to review and update in 2022, and I got about halfway through it, and we had 2 historic flash flooding events in the span of 3 days.
And where does that plan stand today, that work you started in 2022?
Exactly where I left it,
In 2022?
in 2022.
Talk to me about another, something I'm familiar with is you refer to it as a reunification plan. That I'm completely ignorant. Again, it sounds like that particular kind of plan would be something that the program coordinator position would be looking at or handling. Did I understand that right?
Yeah, if we have that role, they're going to be specifically focused on municipal buildings, and that's one component of the plan that I've looked to expand and include in the plan that we haven't traditionally had. Any of the exercises or the plans we've had have been up to that point of like, okay, something's bad, you need to evacuate. What we haven't gone is further to say, well, if we have to evacuate but you can't come back in, then what do we do? So in all likelihood, we're all going to be standing out in the parking lot looking for right now, what are we going to do? And if it's something where it's raining or it's freezing or it's blazing summer out there, we need to have that next step, because once it hits that half an hour mark, we need to be moving people if they haven't already moved themselves. Now, I will say a lot of people are very good. When we do a fire alarm, they get in their car and they leave. We want them to be able to come back.
Understood. Thank you for your patience and in the work that you and your crew do on an everyday basis. It's appreciated.
Thank you, Alderman Devoti. I just have 2 quick questions. I know the comptroller's here, and I'm trying to be on time for everything, but we started a little late with you. I also want to echo just my appreciation that the work that Seema and the team does. I know when you talk about, like the sinkhole, we were out there on the ground, and Seema was right there. Me and you was actually knocking doors together, talking to residents about what is just next. And I think a lot of times people just want to know what's next. And I think Alderman Browning mentioned it. You have a very important department that is, I think, like many departments in City Hall, until we figure out staffing and we figure out pay, which is universal thing throughout the city, is doing everything possible to make sure that whatever the department responsibilities and roles and mission is being achieved. So I just want to thank the staff, and also want to thank you, Commissioner. One of my questions was, I see there was a big jump in the budget from your ask this year to previous years, and you explained that it's crazy that you don't even have a percentage when it comes to public safety, which is, at least could get you to 1%, right, would be nice. But so I understand kind of your reasoning behind that, so I don't need to dive into that. One of my questions was about health and safety, as far as you requested 12 and only got $2 million, so really don't need to go into detail. I think you explained what that could do as far as resources and information, and I think it's kind of a little small amount of money, nothing small in the city, but
It does a lot for our outreach program, but that's also one of our go-to accounts for just the equipment that we need. We don't necessarily fit into all the neat little buckets of the budget. And if you look at, our office supplies, our office is kind of strange. We deal with disasters. So the things that's an office supply to us, other people would have no idea where to stick that in a budget. So that one, is another one that kind of fits with us because we do safety and sometimes a little bit of health with pandemics and things like that. So it's something where, you know, if we need a piece of equipment, if we need something that lends itself to our mission of making safety, that's another place where that comes from.
Gotcha. And, you know, Alderman Browning, I think there's only, from the Board of Aldermen, there's, you know, we get the budget in a very short amount of time, and we're doing a cram course of trying to get this done by May. If we send any changes, you know, hopefully there'll be a special ENA meeting from our comptroller and president and also mayor, and they would take those changes. It's a unique process. We try to change it, but maybe we could do that in the future. I know you talked about the executive secretary too, when Alderman Browning said if you could have just one position to try to make the department run a little better. You highlighted executive secretary too, and also the program coordinator.
It's assistant.
Assistant, executive assistant. I'm thinking of executive assistant too.
We could ask
And
much more of the assistant than a secretary.
I appreciate the clarification, and program coordinator. My only question is, so last year, you attempted, or you were scheduled for 7 employees, and you only filled it to 6. This year, you're asking for 11. If the budget committee were to make a additional increase to the FTE, do you feel that your compartment would be able to, and I know this is also in line with personnel, which is a whole nother thing, but to be able to make sure that you guys could get that position filled so it doesn't sit vacant? It can be
Every
used-
position that we have is filled.
Okay.
So I've requested many more positions, but have never received. The last position that we received was actually the grants manager,
Okay.
which we did fill. We typically don't have an issue filling positions, especially right now when so many emergency managers have found themselves in the job market. I think now would be a really great time to add emergency management positions because of that, and we need them.
And I'm just going off of maybe sometimes when these are printed, maybe things have changed. Just looking at budget positions, FY25 was 7 and Occupy of FY25 was 6. That's why I was asking of that one maybe lingering position that if was
It
occupied.
could have been Kim's position because it took us a while to get her into that position, so it was open for a while.
Okay.
But that was a personnel issue.
Got it, got it. That is all the questions that I have. And again, I do appreciate all the great work that you and the department do with limited resources. So thank you so much for coming.
It's all of them, and I thank them, and all of this I do not only for the safety of the city, but I would like to keep them as well, so we need backup.
Thank you,
But thank
Commissioner.
you all.
Thank you. And thank you to your fabulous team. I know one of them left out, so make sure you give her love from the Budget Committee, and we appreciate you guys. All right, moving in order, the last department for the day is Comptroller's Office, and similar to when we had the mayor here, this is a budget that was created before the current new comptroller was elected, so she's inheriting the previous comptroller's budget and working to the best of her ability, like the mayor's office, to work within the budget of what she has inherited since becoming elected. So if you can introduce yourself and introduce your team and then dive on into the budget, and take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I know you're probably hungry, and it's 12 noon, so we'll try to make this quick. I am Donna Behringer, the new comptroller, 3 weeks ago today. So I just want to remind people, 3 weeks ago today. And I have brought with me the deputy comptroller, Jason Fletcher, who basically do most of the presenting today. I also have Jim Garavaglia here. He used to work for the comptroller's office for how many years was it, Jim? 32 years. And I brought him on pro forma so he can help me with all the logistics. And then Bev Fitzsimmons, and how long, Bev, were you here? 45 years in the comptroller's office, and she's here. Yeah, these are the stars. These are the stars. I don't know what I would do without them. So I'm just going to let you all know that I did not have anything to do with putting this budget together. However, we did go over it, and it will suffice for us for the next year. My concentration will very much be on next year's budget based on doing the best I can to modernize the office, because that's my first goal. We're doing an audit to see the organization, what we do need, how many auditors do we need, how do we, internal auditors, and put all of this together so it'll be very different next year. And I will do the presenting myself, because I will have been hands-on like I've been since I started. So I'd like to say I had a lot of time to go over it, but it's been like drinking water out of a fire hose. My average orientation has been almost 3 hours from every department I touch. So I've done a lot of homework in the last 3 weeks as of today. So I'll be right here, but I'm going to ask Jason to go ahead and present, if that's okay with you all.
Absolutely. And I was going to say before Jason starts, I mean, Ms. Beth, thank you for your years of service. I feel like you've retired, you've come back, you've retired, you've come back. You just continue not to, leave the city and give us all your wisdom and knowledge, and as well to the other gentleman who has come back to the city as well. But
Hasn't left us.
oh, I know. I feel.
Carver came right back.
I know. That's why I said. I know she said she was leaving, and just get dragged right on back in. So thank you, and yes, Jason, whenever you're ready, you can proceed.
Yeah.
Can't allow that. Sure. So hi, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm just going to read from what I wrote just to start us off.
Yep. And if you just state your first and last name for.
Sure. Jason Fletcher. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to discuss the Comptroller's FY26 proposed budget.
And talk a little into the mic. I know you're a
Okay.
tall guy. So
Grab
if you want to take
grab
it off,
You can
kneel and I
pull
can
out
reach
the
it.
mic.
you can pull the mic off,
Oh,
but not.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't break the stand now, Jay.
That's all right. Just handle it.
And it does help if you speak, so that way the recorded,
Okay.
Recording.
Sure.
Here we go.
we can have it for the record and, for posterity.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, thanks for the opportunity. This is great. The Comptroller's Office provides services such as accounting, there's the auditor of the city, as also as the municipal finance officer of the city. And I just wanted to start by saying that we do much more than that, but that's like the three major hats that the Comptroller's Office wears. And within that, there's so much more that we do. From there, I would like to just give you guys a brief overview of the budget. Combined for all funds and centers, the Comptroller's Office FY26 budget as proposed is $18,952,372. This is actually a relatively modest increase. It's only 3% year over year. Our last year's budget was actually 18.4 million. So it's a very small increase year over year. I can break that down. I'd like to. It's the Comptroller's Office proper, which is one fund, general fund and 160 cost center, was actually 73% of that. It came in at $13.7 million. The municipal garage, which is another function of our office, which is cost center 162, that came in at $481,000. With the records retention, which is the city's archive, in case some people don't know that we have a redundancy of the registrar's office. It's called the Comptroller's Archival Library. That came in at $232,000. The Gateway Transportation Center, which is the city's multimodal transportation train station. Multimodal meaning that it's the train station is also has services run out of there, bus services that run out of there. That came in at $2.2 million. And then our TIF administration, which came in at $2.1 million. So that's the accounting staff that actually manages the TIF debt, and largely all things TIF for our office. So from there, I'd like to just highlight our table of organization is proposing 118 full-time staff. So this is a year-over-year increase of 7 employees. 5 of those employees are security officers at the train station, and 2 of the employees are auditors, so we're proposing. The security officers at the train station, just for those who may not know, the train station is largely, like 98.2%, roughly right around there, funded by the operators of the train station. So the train station largely works on a reimbursement basis. We budget for the operation, we pay the operating costs, and we're reimbursed by the operators. So 5 of the 7 positions we've asked to increase are being funded by the operators at the train station. So the only real effect or impact on the general fund, because that's actually special revenue fund, on the general fund is 2 additional auditors. And then from there, I was going to line out the differences, the fluctuations in line items of the budget, but there really are very small. So I did bring detail on that, but I didn't include it in my presentation. But surely we can get into any of the fluctuations, and I should be able to answer most. And if not, I can get back to you. So yeah, with that, that's all I prepared to say. But I'm certainly here for questions.
All righty, just starting in order of seniority, I will start with Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you. I'm just curious, the train station, it does not seem like it should be under the comptroller's office, but here we are.
Right.
I'm just curious a little bit. I know I spoke with Comptroller Behringer about this a little bit a couple months ago, but what's the history? How did that end up under the comptroller's office?
The folks behind us would have the history more than I would, but I think it's about 30 years ago. I think it was about $30 million multimodal project, if you want to.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized?
Yes, just please state your name.
This is James Garavaglia.
James?
Garavaglia.
Gotcha, thank you.
Well, Alderman, the project basically was a combined effort of, as you know, of Amtrak, Greyhound, Bi-State, which played a part initially, and the city of St. Louis. The comptroller at the time, Comptroller Green, believed that because bonds were issued and there was existing city debt on the project, that this was something that belonged under the purview of her office. And so we were participating in the design, the construction, the implementation of all the programming that was there, as well as welcoming the 2 tenants and establishing the leases at the time. And those leases, as Deputy Fletcher discussed, pays for the tenants pay for about 98% of this floor space and the cost of the facility. The 2% they don't cover is to cover the city manager's office and where the guards actually sit. And so that's by and large paid for by the tenants. But it's in our office basically because there was a bond issue, and the comptroller at the time felt that we needed to be in charge of that facility.
So is it the case that that debt is now paid off and it's just still under your department?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I'm not going to propose anything today, but it seems like that's something we could look at. The only other question I had for you, a couple more. The government services administrator position went unfunded in this budget. What would that position do, and is that something you're going to miss?
No, we won't. That position was put on actually a couple years ago. The original intent of the position was to be, I think it's a management level, and it was going to oversee the contract and I think the record retention portion of the comptroller's office. So it was more of an administrative function in her office. And so that's what the original intent of that position was. But since reorganization last year, that position was no longer needed. If in future years we need that position, then we can approach you at the time. But as of right now, that position's not needed.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And then the last question I have for you is, I guess a couple years ago, 2023, some government bonds were issued, about 20 million that are, as of now, unspent. And I was wondering what the status of that money is.
Yeah, I think it's about 21 million unspent. From what I understand of that program, of that bond issue, what would need to happen for that is the capital committee would need to help the budget director, and I'm sure we can be involved, but it's largely the capital committee that would plan the use of those funds. So the comptroller is the fiscal officer that issues the funds through the Municipal Finance Corporation, but largely the programming around how those funds will be used in large part will be done by the capital committee.
Okay, so I should follow up with them because, like, when I look at the list of things that it's more or less been allocated to, like there's $1 million sitting there for pool renovations. And as we talk about not having the pools open because we need to do some renovations, it's like, well, we got the money it's sitting right there. It'd be great to be able to get that spent. And similarly, just a lot of infrastructure projects that are, range from critical to somewhat urgent. So this is money that I'd like to see spent, but it sounds like it's not on your side of the things. I will definitely follow up with the capital committee on that.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Those are my
Sure.
questions. I really appreciate you being here and just looking forward to seeing what this new administration in the comptroller's office can get done.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. I'm going to go and reverse a little bit. Alderwoman Sanye.
I always start with thank yous for being present, both to you, Jason, to you, Comptroller Behringer. I've gotten to see the Comptroller in community since you started, but nice to see you here in front of us. I really just want to let you know that however I can help you all, I'm happy to. I know that we have, like all of City Hall is very antiquated, very outdated, and there's a need for a lot of change. I've heard that you guys have recently expanded Wi-Fi beyond the conference room. So
We're working on it, yes.
okay, well, congratulations on that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to say those types of things on record because I think
Oh, whoops, I cut your mic off. I'm kidding.
to community and to residents. I think they hear sometimes the things that are not updated in City Hall, but I think real life examples of Wi-Fi is literally only in the comptroller office's conference room helps them to understand a little bit more about some of the things that are needed. So, given that you're new and given that you just got here, I do have questions in your budget, but I'm sure you still have questions in your budget and you're still figuring stuff out. So I'm not really going to walk you through all of my questions. I just want to make sure you know my support. I've reached out to Comptroller Behringer and kind of told her about some policy ideas that I have, and I set a timer for a month that I would give you a month before I really started following up on those conversations. And we got 2 more days before we hit the month mark. So I look forward to just talking about some legislative things we can do to make, the office work better, but also to make our city work better for the many people who have to go through contracts and vending and all these things, and that our process unfortunately kind of serves as red tape to a lot of them. So just want to make sure you know that you have my full support in that. And then, there's a side note where I have to follow up with you, Jason, where I learned that we have a very interesting leasing agreement in the 7th Ward that I have to work with you all's office to figure out, because it's going to be time to revisit that and have those conversations. So, I just look forward to you all bringing in some clear policies and clear processes for different things, whether it's leasing agreements, whether it's outside vendors. We had instances last session where people were taking land and giving it off for certain dollar amounts. For me, I'm really interested in consistent criteria. When do you qualify to be able to buy a land at a very cheap market rate? When do you qualify to be able to have a leasing agreement with the city and still get the rent funds? And, I really think it's important as a city that we give people consistency and clear policies, so we're not changing it on a neighborhood by neighborhood or project by project basis. So whatever I can do to work with you all on that as you work on all the other things you have to do in your office, I just want you all to know that you have my full support, and I'm happy to have those conversations, and we'll be emailing Comptroller Behringer today about a policy conversation about some things.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Comptroller Behringer, for being. Thank you, Deputy Fletcher, for being here. I don't really have too many questions about the current budget since it hasn't really changed. Want to echo my colleagues' sentiments that we're here to help. Would love to just know if some of the things you need to modernize the office in this current fiscal year, that you have the budget room to do that.
Yeah, if you want to speak to that. But yes, we are, yes.
Yes, so you tell them about the money and I'll.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we do have some money set aside that we're able to use to modernize the office. I know the office of the comptroller proper has not been updated in over 30 years, or around 30 years. So there are some changes that need to happen. It's even some electrical issues that could actually be dangerous if you actually go in the comptroller's office. So yes, it is happening. We do have money set aside. Yes, so if you want to.
Yeah, so the first thing I said is we need to automate the office. And so not kidding. When I came in, the contracts were up to my waist on the floor that have to be wet signed. And so, exactly. And so
That means.
I have said we need to modernize, and we are working with a program that's through Oracle. And just so you all know, I have learned Oracle hasn't been the issue for the city. We just didn't train people on how to use Oracle because it is used effectively in the private industry. So the first thing is that we have a advisory committee who all touch on the purchase orders and the invoicing. And they're working together with, what's the name of the company again? Armanino, to put this online. And once that happens, instead of you going to that pile that's this high to dig through all the paper, you'll be able to go on the computer to find the invoices and the purchase orders. They'll all be time-stamped, and it'll be DocuSign. So it'll be a click versus having to run around to get signatures from everyone. So that is our goal by the end of the summer, and that will change things unbelievably, because right now, more time is spent digging through papers to find answers. So.
Yeah, sure.
Hope that answers your question.
It does, and then I know that I have not promised a month, but I obviously, I think we're all, I think we're all very supportive of modernization efforts. And I know that you've got now another year to kind of understand and think through what you envision, but do you have any sort of high-level things that you can share with us about what you're looking toward in the next year about, modernizing things?
And I can speak to a couple of them that
Okay.
we're working on. Yeah.
All right. So just like Alderman Browning brought up, we're looking at everything that's underneath the comptroller's office, and does it belong there? And if it doesn't belong there, where does it belong? And how do you need to do it to fix it? And as I go to meetings and I find little things out, right? With the airport, how much they're allowed to do without us signing on, hasn't been updated since 1997. So we will be, leaning on the different aldermen to say, hey, this would be a good piece of legislation, and you sit on this committee. Can you help us with this? It makes no sense that we've not updated some of these things since 1997. So that's, right now, it's literally, and we're getting ready to hire a company that's going to come in and do a complete overhaul look at our department and the jobs, the organization, and how we're going from one department to another department, and is that actually the most effective way? So we are literally going to build all the way down to see how to run the comptroller's office, working smart, not hard.
Yeah, and some of those examples could be right now, with the original implementation of Oracle, then we rolled out, it's been a few years, then we rolled out UKG, which is the timekeeping program that we use. The original go live did not include the integration between Oracle and UKG for project management. And so all of the labor costing that has to be accounted for at the project level is done manually. It takes an enormous amount of time of our accounting staff to do. And so right now we're in the middle of actually, it was just past the last ENA, of actually integrating UKG with the Oracle system. So that's a project that we're doing right now that's going to be a major benefit. As the comptroller already said, we have the contract management module that's coming online now with Oracle. That should be, and I say should because we're really shooting for June 1st go live date. So we should be active in Oracle with the contract module starting June 1st. Things may happen, but right now we're doing the testing, and then we're going to start rolling out training for the rest of the month of May. And so that's going to be a huge benefit. We also have a new TIF program that we've developed with a company called Slalom. So there's a company that is helping us develop a proprietary software only for us, it's not canned, to pull down the base rates and all of the different tax information that the TIF department needs to calculate to make payments on the TIF debts and whatnot. So that's it's about a $600,000 project, but that's going to be huge for the TIF department and the managing of TIF debt going forward. So those are three of the major improvements that we're making right now.
Thank you, that's great. And then final question for now. I did see line items in the budget for supporting the state audit of the city, and I think obviously audits have been in the news lately. So just kind of using this opportunity to just ask you sort of how your office handling, this this, I think, larger audit process, I think, it sounds like.
So when it comes, I'm sorry. So are you referring to, yeah, which audit are you referring to?
Well, I think is there a state audit of the city? Is that what that line item is for?
Talking to the mic. Mike.
I apologize. It was turned in, but the Secretary of State's office, I don't think is taking all the signatures. So it's
Okay.
right there, it's at.
Okay.
So we have no problems with auditing the whole city. That's not a problem with us at all, especially if they're doing it and we're not.
Right. And any audit of the comptroller's office by the state has happened in the years past. Anytime that happens, of course, we coordinate very well with them and we provide anything that's needed. But I haven't heard of any audit of the comptroller's office in general, but yeah. I mean-
Okay, that line item's just there, just.
Oh, you mean,
whenever-
okay, so line
Wasn't
item
there
is
like a
budget.
500,000, am I going, crazy? Was there a $500,000 line item budget for state
Yeah, I have.
3? That was 23.
So so we have auditing services, we have $39,000 budgeted. Actually, it's $40,000, and that's for Maximus. That's for our annual that we do. So that's our auditing.
I read that wrong. I was looking at fiscal year 23 and not,
Yeah, you're okay.
not 25.
Yeah, no
Or
worries.
26. That's good.
Yeah, no worries.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Sure.
Alderman Devotie.
Mr. Chairman, I have no questions, but Comptroller Behringer, Deputy Fletcher, Mr. Garavaglia, and ma'am, my door's always open, so if we can be of help, just let me know.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. That was quick and painless. I know the people on the other side appreciate that. I want to echo the same sentiment as my colleagues. Comptroller Behringer, we served together for 5 years in the House, and people probably wouldn't expect how close we were coming from two separate parts of the city. But we had a lot of conversations, and we worked on a lot of great pieces of legislation together. And I look forward to continuing to work with you now as you're in your role of comptroller to move the city forward, and appreciate all the staff and the team that is going to make sure she is successful and the whole team is successful, because it takes everyone to make sure that happens. I do have a few questions. One, I couldn't quit smiling ear to ear when you talked about the updates that are happening with making sure that there's no wet sign, because I've only been here for 2 years, but Lord knows it has been a pain to track down contract ward stuff and then come to the comptroller's office and say, will you sign this so that this project can get moved. So hopefully that update of DocuSign, which I know alders we use and BPS use, so glad that it's being a universal thing throughout the office, will hopefully get some of these projects. Workforce will still be the workforce, but at least get the ball rolling, which I think leads into my next question. With that automated system, would that be helpful for paying vendors? I know one of the biggest thing is vendors are always frustrated that we do not pay on time from the city of St. Louis, previously coming from the office. So can you talk about
Sure.
if this is going to help vendors get paid on time?
Yeah, sure. Honestly, the vendor situation is largely, and this is not to point fingers, it's so that we can improve the city services that need to be improved. The vendor situation that has been in the news over the last few years is almost entirely a reflection of the departments themselves. So right now, when a vendor sends in an invoice, that invoice for services provided, the invoice goes to the department the service is provided to. That department then needs to enter the invoice into the accounting system, Oracle, and then we process that invoice and make payment. Our processing time is under 2 days per invoice. That's how quick we are. It's like 1.8 days, the last report I looked at. The departments, it's not any one individual department, it's just in general, departments get such an influx of invoices that they may be overwhelmed, maybe short staff, or sometimes I've seen it's just department employees that leave the city service and then invoices just sit on their desk for weeks on end. So honestly, the delay has never really been in our office. It's been at the department levels, unfortunately. The contract module, at least this first iteration, is just going to be the approval phase. So it will not be the creation of city contracts. That'll still be done through the city councilor's office on paper, but this will track the executive approval flow. Right now, it's not trackable. Nobody knows where any contract is, and that can be an issue in the city, or best citywide, but that can be an issue. So what it'll do now is, so the answer is no, because the invoices, the issue is largely at the department level. But what this will do is, once the contract has been agreed to by the city councilor's office to be ready for the approval line, for the approval flow, it will be entered into the system at the city councilor level. City councilor will review it and approve it. Board of E&A will approve it through the comptroller and to the end.
Gotcha.
So we'll at least be able to track it that way.
And going back to the vendors, I guess there's no position or no way, or this is a question, is there a way for the comptroller office to know when a vendor has a bid out, a contract, or whatever it's, before they put it in Oracle? I'm assuming there's no way for you guys to know until it's in Oracle for you guys to do it on your end, correct?
Yeah, there's no way until we get the contract, or if we do monitor E&A. So other than E&A and when they put it in the system as a requisition, there's really no way outside of that. We don't know as they're developing contracts through their various agencies. We don't know that.
Gotcha. Another question. So when alders go out for like war capital stuff, if it's, anything that usually we work with BPS get a DocuSign, and then I believe they send it over most likely to comptroller's office. Sounds about right?
For war capital, like for transfers?
For like any project that we're doing, if it's like
Yeah. So our office sets up all capital projects, both sponsored capital as well as federal grant projects. So all projects in the Oracle system get set up by our office.
Will this new process with the e-sign be a kind of fast track to be getting some of these war capital projects done? Because again, I know there's been some times when my BPS liaison has said, we've done everything on, I've signed it, BPS has signed it, and for the comptroller's office to, sign off on it. So
yeah, it will definitely speed up that process. I think right now we're running 2 and 3 weeks for a contract to get through the comptroller's office review. This, we would hope to take it down to less than a week. So this could cut it in half, maybe more. We haven't seen the full iteration, the full carrying out of the workflow yet, but when we do, we could have action. But yeah, it will definitely make significant improvements.
Okay. And I've got a few more questions, and then I will release my colleagues from a long day of testimony. Is there any, way, instead of, invoices going to Oracle, is that the fastest way? Can invoices come directly to the comptroller office, or is Oracle, kind of the fastest way for them to be sent if they're invoiced?
Well, the issue, the city, each department has, in some departments more than others, they have accounting staff of their own. All departments largely have an accounting staff of their own. And so if we were to receive all invoices, we would have to double, if not, we'd have to at least double our staff. I mean, the volume of invoices, for instance, Department of Personnel, there were over 800 Barnes Care invoices over a 6 or an 8 month period that went unpaid, that the comptroller's office had to step in and pay because an employee left and the invoices were emailed, and so they weren't being caught. So, so the answer is, unfortunately, no, at least not with the current staffing level.
Got you.
Yeah.
And I want to get to employees and making sure I'm looking at the same amount, and have heard a lot of employees in the past have left the office, which have kind of put it in a limbo. So, because you have several accounts, am I looking at it right that and this isn't the new comptroller budget, but the previous budget, that in 2025 you guys budgeted for 78.6 positions and only filled 55? That sound about right?
Yeah, we budgeted 78.6. I actually don't have the filled with me. I do apologize for that.
You're fine. The one I'm looking at, I think Mr. Coleman's looking at it too, just to have second eyes. It looked like it was maybe, and he probably wasn't, I just called him out, sorry. It looked like it was about 55 positions filled from that 78.
That sounds about right, but I think in large part that's it's a point in time snapshot, in that our office has had fluctuations over the last year or two in staffing. There have been points in time where we were fully staffed, or largely fully staffed. most of the issues have come from personnel, and it's not on personnel, but with the transition, it's been an issue really getting staff onboarded. So they go on vacant. That doesn't mean they're not needed. It just means that we're trying very hard to get them through the process.
Okay, and it looks like this year you requested 85.6 and we're budgeted for 81.6. Does that sound about right? This isn't a general fund.
Yeah, general fund, we're budgeting for, 80.6, yes.
Okay, and then in the overall, you are requesting 113.5. Does that make sense?
118 total for all funds and centers, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that includes 1,011, and all the 1111s, which is GTC and TIF. It also includes the Muni Garage and records retention. So for a total of 118.
118, and how many employees are currently at the department?
At the department right now, so the municipal garage and record retention are flat. They have no increases. The largest increase in employees year over year it's only 160 comptroller general fund. That was 2 employees. And then 5 employees for the train station, which is 1111.
But I'm saying, how many total employees do you guys, so you're asking for 118, how many are totally employed currently?
For our, I actually don't, I'm sorry, I don't have the actual employees employed today. 80.6 is what we're budgeting. I can get you that, though.
Okay, no, I was just
Sure.
just curious to see if there is ways that we could be a help from, always look at what departments previously asked for, and then as Comptroller Behringer being the fiscal hawk in Jefferson City and always was protecting the dollars and the purse strings, I'm trying to take some of that here to the city, but just see how we can be a help from looking at previous budgets to what you guys are asking for now, so I know how to reach you.
Yeah, sure. And I can get that to you today.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, thank you, Comptroller, for coming.
No, thank all of you. I appreciate it.
All right. No problem. All righty. We have no resolutions for review. Committee discussion was, again, the budget, which we had several departments come in today. Madam Clerk, do we have any acknowledgement of written testimony?
No.
Announcements from any committee members? Just want to remind everybody, we're back in here at 9:30. We're kicking off with the Building Division at 9:30, followed by Excise Division at 1:30. There will be a break in between, because I believe between the building and the excise, it may take a minute. And then we'll follow back up at 1 p.m. with the Circuit Attorney's Office. Madam Clerk, please make note.
Is that today or tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Wednesday, tomorrow will be Building Commission, Excise Division, there will be a break, and then Circuit Attorney's Office. Madam Clerk, please make note that the Alderwoman from the 12th is not excused, and I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Noted.
All in favor, aye?
Who was the
Opposed?
first? It was Sanye? Thank
Made
you.
by Alderwoman from the 6th, seconded by Alderwoman from the 7th. All in favor, aye? Any opposed? Motion carries.